Hey everybody, welcome again to the Watchlist Podcast. I'm your host Jacob Boyer, joined by my friend Brennan Boorse today.
Hey, how's it going? What's up, Jake?
Pretty good. How have you been, man?
I'm good. I'm living life, doing the thing, doing what it is.
Can you
movies.
move it just a little closer? Well, you don't have to crank it right into your mouth. Just make sure it's kind of in front of your mouth.
It's in front, baby. Oh, it's in front, baby.
Starting off strong. So, so third episode. Kind of impressed that I got this far.
But pat on the back. It's farther than I've ever gotten as far as releasing them goes. I always record them and then being like, that's nobody needs to hear that.
What kind of stuff have you done podcast wise?
Rob and I have my partner. Rob and I have comedy
friend
partner.
of ours from high school.
Have we done a bunch of tries at podcasts, a bunch of different things and everything like that. A lot of the time we listen to it, there's audio difficulties or any of those things, and then a couple times it's just been like, this isn't. Nobody needs to hear this,
right.
But it's that confidence to actually release it and then get better as you keep doing the damn thing, because nobody starts out perfect, So.
Exactly. So I guess that's a little bit of encouragement on my end.
Yeah. I mean, once again, this is farther than I've ever gotten. So mad respect to you. This is a hell of a setup as well.
It's not too terribly nice. I mean, the first time we got video working, but
it's not as good as Rogan. But.
that's the end game. We'll have the Watchlist Podcast experience.
Okay, yeah, gotcha. Hopefully a few less alt-right guests on there, though.
Oh God, yeah. All right, let's get off that. Let's talk about some movies. Okay, so let's do some introductions. I kind of hyped you up a little bit in the last episode. We talked about it in the first episode and a little bit at the end of the second episode that I'm somewhat of an aspiring filmmaker in my free time. We've done projects together in the past in high school, just dumb little projects where it's oh man, let's lock ourselves in the mass media room for 8 hours on the last day of school and crank out this terrible movie trailer.
Lots of consecutive hours in that editing bay.
Yeah, but it's the one thing that I always credit you with is that I think that anytime you listen to a filmmaker talk about their inspiration, they're like, oh man, well I always liked playing with my family camera and I like writing stories from a young age, but then there was this one moment where I saw this movie and it made me believe that I could do it. And the moment that I always reference whenever I talk about that is the time after we finished editing that terrible trailer and we went over to your place and watched Kevin Smith's Red State.
Oh yeah. I mean, Red State is
that was the moment where I was like, I can do this. So I owe you a huge amount of thanks for inspiration. Please,
no problem at all. I mean, I could go on forever about Red State. I love Red State. That is one of those movies that definitely it's not only I could do this, it's I can be fun and original, because that movie is just it's tonally all over the place, which some people I think criticize it for, but for me it's this is exactly what I want out of a Kevin Smith horror-esque movie,
and first time he'd even tried anything like
absolutely.
that, so what do you even expect going into it? Thankfully it's the best horror thing he's tried so far, but
it's conflicting, because certainly Tusk is not I like Tusk a lot. It's now nowhere near as good as Red State in my mind, but I do have the thing where I'm Tusk does have the better Michael Parks performance for my money, and maybe that's not fair necessarily, because when you watch Tusk and it's that scene where it's the beginning scene where Michael Parks is sitting down with Wallace or Justin Long, and it's these slow camera moves across the room. It almost felt unfair. It almost felt like Kevin Smith put a senile old man on camera and it was just go crazy, do your thing. So maybe it's not a whole lot of acting there, but I mean, I do, for me, my money, it's brilliant, and it's bizarre as hell.
I will say his performance is the kind of, maybe not the only redeeming thing about that movie, but it's certainly the thing that I remember the most.
For sure.
But
the thing I remember most, aside from having you already seen the movie while I saw it in theaters, and
that was a good role reversal too, because you were the one who had seen Red State a dozen times, and
now
you were
I get to watch you watch it
exactly,
and now I have your eyes on me as I'm experiencing Tusk. I remember it's the moment, spoilers here, it's the moment Wallace is revealed. It's revealed to Wallace and the audience that he has had his leg amputated. And just the concept of that is like horrifying enough, but Justin Long really kind of sells it on his face. And I was like, wow, this is something out of Justin Long, like heretofore unseen, you know, and that was one of those things where I was like, I'm not sure if I'm scared, but I'm definitely sad for this character right now. Like, and it's this thing I experience in like a lot of like these torture-y kind of horror movies where at a certain point it sets into me that it's like, oh, this is just, now I just have to watch bad things happen to these people for the rest of the movie, and that's what this movie is. And it's like, there's a certain admirable quality to that, like helplessness, but there's also like, well, this just is not fun to watch right now.
yeah. In the case of Tusk, in more ways than one at points, but it's I mean, we all got to start somewhere, and I always think back to those times, and I'm like, oh man, that's like that was the start. If I ever go anywhere in life, I'm always going to say that was the start of something special.
Wow, that's very nice of you to say. Red State is just,
yeah. So let's let's dive a little bit more into stuff that we enjoy. So I mentioned. And I've told you this a couple times before. My favorite movie of all time, I touched on in the first podcast, is Synecdoche, New York.
So that's your goat. That's my
go-to. I always say that's my favorite movie. But I'm curious. We definitely had this conversation before, but I don't remember exactly. What are some of your favorites?
So, Synecdoche, real quick. It's not. I wouldn't say it's like one of my favorites, but I've liked it more every single time I've seen it.
How many times have you seen it by now?
I think I've seen it like 2.5.
Okay.
I think to say 3 would be generous for somebody like me who falls asleep a lot during movies, especially ones I've already seen. But yeah, I mean, that's one where like the first time I saw it, I was, it's like I'm confused. I don't really know how to feel, but I am feeling the intended emotions, but I just don't have the thread to grasp for. And then I think, like in general, I think I like to see movies like 2 times before I really like make a full on judgment, because there's been movies I've been like so excited about after the first viewing, and then you go back and you're like, I might have been a little
too generous.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I really like Synecdoche, New York. As far as like my favorites, it's hard. There's so many I love. Like definitely in my top 5 of all time has got to be The Master, though.
Okay. Yeah.
It's brilliant. I mean, I think I saw it probably when it came out when I was in high school, and I think I watched it again, just watching it with somebody else, like a couple years ago, and I think that was really when the door opened for me, where I was like, oh, there's like a lot going on in this movie. It's beautiful to look at. The score is amazing. 2 of the greatest actors of all time giving like amazing performances, and then also Amy Adams, another great actor. She's pivotal to that whole movie. Some would say she's the master. But why did
you quit stand-up again?
Because of that. Because of stuff like that. Exactly. Folks, airplane food. It's actually pretty good. But The Master is like one I absolutely love. I mean, PTA is just like, he's one of the greats. I think that's probably... Yeah, I mean, I think it's his best movie. I think it's my favorite of his, but I love all of his stuff.
I'd say the same, probably.
Yeah.
For the while, it was There Will Be Blood, but...
I mean, another, like... Yeah. They're just movies that, like, will go down as, like, classics. If they're not both already part of the Criterion Collection, not that's necessarily the bar for anybody or whatever.
I kind of consider that to be the bar in a lot of cases, because I've yet to see a Criterion movie where I'm like, I don't see any merit. I don't see why this is on this list.
I think... So... I can't necessarily speak to the ones that I've seen, but I've definitely seen certain ones on the list where I'm like, that made the list?
Really? What are some examples for you?
I'm failing to come up with it right now, but it was actually like a couple days ago where I was very much like a little bit like, I don't know that dates. So I mean, like, it's interesting because it's like, if you got a great director like David Lynch, I think like all of his stuff is in the Criterion channel.
A lot of it for sure.
And like, I guess it's not like an AFI list where you got to kind of worry about like, well, we want to get an equal representation. We don't want to over-represent one person or anything like that. It just has to be great by a certain merit that they want to make that part of the thing there.
Right.
I mean, I have the Criterion Firewalk with me, which is the Twin Peaks prequel movie. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm also kind of like, this is a Criterion, huh? Like, this is very, it's like, it's interesting. But yeah, I guess at the moment, I'm failing to think of ones that are like egregious to me that we would consider them so. Kubrick is huge. I love
another one where he has most of his filmography on that list.
Yes,
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so it's like him. Maybe this is like too simplistic. I look at PTA as like the closest thing we have right now to a Kubrick, like a guy with just like a very singular vision that doesn't. It's a singular vision, but like any genre he picks is going to be something totally different. But you feel comfortable with this guy like behind the wheel here,
right?
Kubrick, I want to say, not that he has to be. I'm just like in my mind. I really love Strangelove, and I also love. I mean, The Shining is also like another like that. Yeah. That's one those. The Shining is one recently where that's just been on the TV, and I'll walk in and out the room, and I just love. The sound doesn't need to be on. Certainly helps. I mean, the score is great, but it's just like also a beautiful movie,
right?
And then I mean, like Inglourious Basterds is like an all-time for me.
Okay,
that's my favorite Tarantino. In my heart, I think he knows it's his best one because of the last
final
shot.
line.
Yeah, so to me, that's like, you know what's up.
Are you familiar with the El Rey Network, Robert Rodriguez's?
I know that there's
TV
like
network.
From Dusk Till Dawn, the TV show is on there and everything like that, but I've not seen anything on it.
He has a series on it called, I think it's called From the Director's Chair, or no, just The Director's Chair, where he sits down and it's like an hour-long show and he interviews a bunch of famous directors. I haven't seen
Tarantino or Rodriguez.
Rodriguez.
Oh, I was gonna say, Tarantino for an hour would be.
They did 2 hours with Tarantino.
Okay,
It was a 2-part episode. The first episode was from his like True Romance and Natural Born Killers up until Pulp Fiction, and then the second episode was Pulp Fiction to, I think the most recent one was Django when they shot that. The Hateful Eight was on its way out when they recorded that interview, but goddamn, what was I saying about Tarantino? Oh, he when he's talking about Bastards, so the whole show is it's just Rodriguez is a director himself asking other directors, why do you do things the way you do them, and how do you approach for Tarantino, like how the hell do you shoot something like the Battle at the House of Blue Leaves? How do you even block that? How do you? And then Tarantino breaks down how they did it. So it's like a cool insight. And when they were talking about Inglourious Basterds, Tarantino's talking about all the problems he had making it and how proud he was with it when they were done. And he said, I think that he closed that segment with, "I wouldn't be surprised if when I'm gone, Bastards is the one they talk about the most."
I think it's hard because it's like I think Pulp Fiction is probably his most influential, probably for the worse, because like everyone wants to be Pulp Fiction. The amount of movies. I mean, I saw Bad Times at the El Royale.
I haven't seen that yet. It's been on my list.
I personally hated like almost everything. There was some parts where I really enjoyed it. I liked John Hamm's performance. Chris Hemsworth is good, but he comes in far too late into the movie. But the entire time I was just like, I mean, it's original. It's not based on anything. That's great, but it is based on every Tarantino movie you've ever seen, and it's just like feels like a pale imitation. And for Tarantino, a guy who is already doing the best form of imitation from all of his like favorite people, it's a copy of a copy, and it frustrates me so hard to see anybody that is not him try to do that. So I would say Pulp Fiction is probably the one that's like made the mark probably the most, but Inglourious Basterds is just like some top-notch stuff. Yeah,
Bastards is, I think I go back and forth between if I like that or Kill Bill the most. I know you're not the biggest fan of Kill Bill, but I just really respect Kill Bill from kind of the way that it takes a little bit of every genre and puts it all together seamlessly. With the exception of the only time where it kind of loses me is that anime sequence.
I was about to say I love the anime.
I do love it, but that's the only point where I'm kind of like, okay, this is a little bit taking me out of the moment.
I think I felt that way when I was younger and I saw the movie, and then as I've kind of like gained more of like an appreciation for like that kind of art style and everything like that, like on subsequent viewings, I've been like, oh, this might be like one of the best parts of the movie for me. And I mean, like, to be clear, yes, they are Hateful Eight and the Kill Bill is probably my least favorite, but like the worst Tarantino movie is still better than like 99% of the trash that's I mean, like,
exactly,
even the one I like the least, I still am like, yeah, that's a great movie, so I mean, like,
that's just not for me.
Yes, it's just there's something I like in all of them. It's just like Hateful Eight especially is one where I'm like, I feel like I'm trying to find something that I like when I watch it, and sometimes I'm just like, you know what I think a lot of it is, I think I was really worried. I think you can feel it in Django, and you can definitely feel it in Hateful Eight, the lack of Sally Menke, or Sally... Sally Menke,
the editor,
right? Yeah. So Glorious with Bastards was her last movie before she died, and I felt like both of those movies have real, like, this is too long, this should be longer, you know, like self-indulgent kind of things. I was like, oh, I don't really know if I like Tarantino Unchained right now. But that being said, I mean, I think Fred Raskin is the guy who did the editing for Django and Hateful, as well as Once Upon a Time. And Once Upon a Time was one of those movies for me. I feel like other people have, you know, different opinions about certain things in the movie or how long certain parts of it go on.
Right.
I felt like, oh, we nailed a very nice sweet spot of like doing all the self-indulgent stuff while also like keeping butts in seats, you know?
Right. Yeah. It's I Once Upon a Time I kind of go back and forth a little bit on, because like you were saying, where like this certain stuff feels too long or too short. That was a movie that I've never really had this before, but when I was watching it, I was like, man, this is really taking its time. But then when it was over, I was like, no, I wouldn't change any of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there in the moment, I was like, oh man, you could easily cut down on. And then when I was done with it, I was like, this is pretty solid, like start to finish.
For sure. I think it might be his funniest movie. I think like every Tarantino movie, with the exception of like, you know, being Django Unchained and Hateful Eight are both westerns, and you could even get a little bit of western in this one too. You really like some spaghetti westerns. I think every Tarantino movie is trying to do its own genre. Kill Bill's Kung Fu, you know, like all these things here. Aside from like Once Upon a Time being like a fable, you know, like a Hollywood fable or whatever, I would say it's his comedy. It is his like funniest movie.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the humor might be going over some people's heads, or maybe they're not, you know, necessarily getting it. It's coming from like the nuance of the actors. It's coming from the way that Leo's
cries in front of the
Leo's
little girl.
performance in that movie, man. It's one of those things where I've been led to believe that it is very difficult as an actor that is a good actor to play a bad actor, and then has to then do a big enough color change that it's like, wait, this guy can't act. And Leo's like doing all of that. His tears are hilarious, and he's working them up like in an instant. Every time he like breaks to cry, I'm like howling with laughter. And then you got that trailer scene.
Exactly, that's one of my favorite moments in the entire movie. That trailer scene
is like incredible. Yeah. I saw it opening night with like a theater full of people, and everyone was just loving every minute of it. And then, you know, the climax happens, and the theater was just roaring. It was amazing, which was like one of the biggest like ways I felt whiplash was then when I would like talk to people afterwards, and they wouldn't have like, some people just straight up, I think you maybe don't like it as much as other stuff, but I know people who are like, that was terrible, I hated it. And I'm like, I don't know what planet you're on, but like, what movie did you watch? Because like I just saw two bona fide superstars, like an amazing cast full of actors playing you know, great characters, but Brad Pitt and Leo, like superstars like they don't make anymore, turning in like career best performances in a movie that's hilarious and also like manages to be everything Tarantino is while also being a restrained version of it. For me, it's like, for my money, as far as that goes, it's like, I don't know what you wanted out of it, you know?
Yeah. When you put it like that, I kind of, when I left it, I was like, that kind of like what you said with, it was good, but I wouldn't have called it one of his best. And when I think back on it, I think fondly on it, but like in the same way that I think of like Jackie Brown. Like I very much enjoyed Jackie Brown, but I wouldn't be in such a huge hurry to put that on. If it's like you have 3 hours, you can watch one Tarantino movie. What are you picking? But I do respect it as like, especially when you put it through that way, where it's like this is his true comedy, because it really is in a lot of ways.
Really funny movie. I mean, like, and it's line deliveries that like, I don't know if they were coached or if it's just like a confidence in the actors that you have that they know that this Al Pacino coming on being like, I forget, he says, I was watching this movie with my wife, Marianne Schwab. He just like says her name in such a fun way, and it's like everyone's having a good time here. I love that. I should say I love it when people are having a good time and it like fits with the movie. Sometimes it's really annoying when an actor comes in and like he's clearly like, oh, I'm hamming this up because this movie's trash around me or whatever, and I need the consistent tone, as it were.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's fun to watch people have fun and to feel confident in it because you got a good guy behind the wheel there. Dude who knows what he's doing.
Exactly. So to kind of segue a little bit to our next point, we mentioned the just powerhouse performances from both actors.
Yeah. Oh,
and
sure, yeah.
Brad Pitt ended up winning an Oscar for that role.
Yeah.
So the Oscars.
Yeah.
What did you think of this year's Oscars?
The little golden trophy man.
Because it hasn't been good in the past few years, I feel like.
No.
Last year especially, I was really kind of mad, especially when they get up and they're like, well, first of all, the whole meme of the Black Panther being nominated in every category was really irritating to me. But then when they get up and they go, okay, Best Picture goes to Green Book. But yeah, that I was like, okay, you've shot you've beyond shot yourself in your foot. You've shot yourself in the foot, and then to try and fix it, you sawed your foot off.
I'll be real with you. I did not see Green Book. I did not see it.
It's such a waste of time.
To me,
it's
the
most
idea that the guys who made Dumb and Dumber were gonna make like a woke movie.
It's the most. It's like if you watched like Tropic Thunder, where they have those fake trailers in the beginning, and they have the Robert Downey Jr. one where it's like so blatantly the Oscar bait. Yes. That's what Green Book is. Every single decision, every single decision is just like, what can we do that's gonna, or like the fucking Family Guy, where it's like that Oscar movie where it's like, this World War II
Oscar Gold,
Oscar Gold, So it's that was so it's left such a bad taste in my mouth where I was like, I kind of feel obligated to watch it every year just because I like there are legitimately good movies that are nominated and I want to see them succeed. But in the past few years, it's just been like just such letdown after letdown after letdown. But this year, I feel like they kind of really they gave the movies that deserved the awards what they deserved.
Yeah,
with maybe the exception of The Lighthouse. That should have gotten cinematography, I feel like.
I am inclined to agree that Lighthouse probably would have been a good choice for cinematography. So I didn't love 1917 at all. I think it's really way overrated, to be perfectly honest with you. I think something you were talking about on your first episode when you were talking about Climax was that Climax, it might be not one take, but it's not those obvious shots of like, well, we're going to pan over this rock.
Right, yeah.
And maybe it's because the movie is sold as being like one take, but like when I'm watching the movie, I'm like, this thing's got more takes in it than a regular movie does.
Exactly.
More edits or cuts or whatever.
Every single time there's like anything in front of the lens, like that's not the main characters, is just so blatant. Like, okay, we're going to mask this out and put a cut right there,
and also
drop in
that CGI rat.
Yeah, oh god.
I mean, like, here's the only reason I was surprised by what happened was because I was so focused on the CGI rat.
On the CGI rat.
I can't believe you guys are doing a rat right now. And then the explosion happens, and I was like, okay, touche.
Justified. But I did like 1917, but like you said, it's just like credit where credit's due. It was not like it's so clear to like anyone who knows anything about movies that it's so cheated.
So
like,
let me ask you about this, because in my mind, I feel like people are put these two movies right next against each other, and for my mind, like, as far as I'm concerned, I think Dunkirk is vastly superior to 1917. I just think people like complain about the characters, like lack of character in Dunkirk and everything like that. And I'm like, yeah, it's war. Things are crazy. You don't really have the time to like get everyone's life story. It's like it's a hectic kind of thing, and then he's doing all those timelines, which are fun, and then. I only ever saw the movie like in theaters in IMAX, but like I don't really want to see it any other way again, because it's like the sound and the design of that movie is great. The whole thing's beautiful. Tom Hardy proving again I can just act with just my eyes. Like I think he's done it like 3 or 4 times now. Fury Road, Bane, and that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like Dunkirk, as far as I'm concerned, and I feel like people don't love Dunkirk. As far as I'm concerned, Dunkirk over 1917 by a country mile. Yeah,
I still very much enjoyed 1917, but it's definitely Dunkirk is definitely much better, I would say.
I also didn't super appreciate having a bunch of character actors pop up and be like, and now I'm here to be the British general.
Yeah. And they're advertised way more in the trailer.
Yes.
Like, that really annoys me when it's like, hey, we got Colin Firth and Benedict Cumberbatch, and they show up for like literally a 5-minute scene, and then they're gone.
I don't like Mark Strong. To me, Mark Strong,
Where was he again?
Mark Strong is
the guy on the truck, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Another thing with that movie, and it's a problem I have when I watch movies where I'm thinking about the movie that could have been, as opposed to just watching the movie that it is or whatever.
Yeah.
But then on the truck there was that guy who's, I think he's an Indian soldier or something like that. He had a turban on, and I don't know, something about him like kind of leapt out to me where I was like, that's a super compelling story, actually. Like, I want to see what his whole deal is, because he seemed like a funny guy. He like cracked a joke or whatever, and I was like, already I'm like, for whatever reason, just because like him in this setting is new and interesting looking or whatever, I'm already more like, I care more about him than I do about this guy
trying to save his friend's brother.
Yeah, which I will say, that's something I did like about the movie, was that it is that I enjoyed the scene where he finally got to talk to the brother, and I was like, I like that this is kind of a bittersweet, ending. We're not doing full on Saving Private Ryan.
I was that made me happy, because I was watching it and I really liked that first 20 minutes when they're like, okay, we got to get out of the bunker, and they're going through like that no man's land. That was really good up until they get in the bunker and there's all those CGI rats. But like, I was fully expecting it was going to be like a Saving Private Ryan thing, where there was going to be this big reunion with the brothers, and it's going to be like, oh man, I saved you, oh my god, I owe you one. And then when the brother dies, like I was really happy with that. Like, I was like,
did you not see that coming?
I didn't see that coming. So, well, when the moment where he's like, we got to save him, like, I was like, okay, that's not something bad's going to happen. But
so
I
got very frustrated at the main character not learning his lesson from like, you got to shoot the bad guys, bud. You just, because you didn't. Your friend's dead, and then later on in the movie, he also like hesitates to shoot, and I'm like, you gotta kill these people. This is war. The other real quick, most egregious rat in the movie, is it 1917 or is it The Departed?
Yeah, I'd say this one by far.
Yeah,
at least that one is.
I believe it's a real rat in The Departed.
Exactly. But yeah, so I mean, so we touched on that one. I guess let's just go down the best picture list, because I mean, we could talk forever, and then if we have any other ideas, we'll pop up. So we touched a little bit on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, 1917. I know you have some hot takes on Marriage Story. We talked about that a little bit. What are your thoughts on that?
Marriage Story, politely, it's not for me. In general, I don't like Noah Baumbach. He does this thing, and I feel like I've expressed this to you before, that I also have the issue with Rian Johnson personally, where I feel like it is a person who lost an argument with somebody in real life and then thought of the comeback a couple minutes later and is like, well, now I need to make the movie so that they can never rebuttal, and then this is set in stone right here.
Right.
And I really feel that in the scene, I don't know if you know that it was memed to hell, but the fight scene where Adam Driver punches the wall, like, I saw that before I even saw the movie. Maybe that colored it for me. But I've never seen two people act so hard and make me feel nothing. It didn't do it for me. ScarJo is not, I personally don't think she's that great of an actress.
Okay.
I think she's got her things that she shines in. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a great actor, so who am I to like really? But it's like one of those things. Adam Driver is a good actor. I think he's doing the best with what he's got. I think of Noah Baumbach and Adam Driver, this is much less egregious than While We're Young, which is like the other movie where Noah Baumbach is trying to like get back at the catfish guy. I don't know if you know any of that stuff.
No, this is the only Noah Baumbach movie I've seen. At least that I can think of. I don't know his filmography that
I don't
extensively.
know. I think Squid and the Whale is one people really recommend. I have not seen it, so maybe that's like something I do need to do. I'm just kind of focused. Personally, for me, what I know of him is the more recent Netflix releases. But they've both just been kind of like...
What's the other one?
While We're Young. I don't know if it was a Netflix release necessarily, but that's where...
Like a streaming service type.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen it there a bunch. But yeah, it just doesn't... Marriage Story is nothing for me. Who won Best Actress?
I think it went to... I had it in mind. Oh, Renee Zellweger. For the Judy Garland movie, which I didn't even know it existed until
I knew it existed.
I saw the show.
I just didn't see it. I mean, it just was one of those ones where I was like, yeah, that's probably not for me.
I will say her speech, like, that was hilarious because we were watching it and her speech went on for so long.
Oh, well, at like one point
it was so painful.
I wish I remembered exactly what it was, but I remember at one point she kind of like equated like Nazis with something else, and I was like, well, those are not those. No, it wasn't that. She said I
don't even remember. I just remember being like she
great
is still
figures.
talking.
Here's what it was. She said like great figures like Harriet Tubman and Martin Scorsese, and I was like, whoa, I don't think Harriet Tubman would like. Well, there's a bunch of stuff where Harriet Tubman's like picture was up and like all these people are like dancing around it, and all these rich white people in tuxedos watching. I was like, I don't think Harriet. I mean, who am I to say? I'm not, I'm certainly a white person, but like for me, I was like, I don't know if this is what she was about. We haven't even gotten her on the 20 yet. Let's hook it up first.
Oh man.
But yeah, Renee's speech was a little wild. Joaquin's speech,
yeah,
I was a fan. I like Joaquin. He's my favorite of all time. At least living, but I'm pretty sure all time.
Yeah.
If we had to go like, where is the debate? It's gonna go to my other master. I like Philip Seymour Hoffman a lot. Yeah. I mean, he's amazing.
They're both. I don't know if I have a favorite per se, but they're both definitely would be in the top 5.
Yeah.
If I had to narrow it down.
Yeah.
I think this was one of those scenarios where he. I guess we can. Well,
sorry.
We'll talk a little bit on Mayer's story, but just since I already brought it up, I think that this was clearly a scenario where it's like, okay, you've been nominated a bunch and you haven't won, so we'll give you one this time because you should have won before. But
yeah, and that happened with Leo too.
Yeah.
And that's The Revenant was one of those movies where I was like, I mean, you just threw this guy in the cold and he's shivering for
give
real.
Him something.
I mean, yes, give him something, but I was also like, that's not really acting. He's just legitimately cold on camera, right? Like he does, he looks uncomfortable. I believe that he's uncomfortable, actually.
Right.
And like Leo would say as much. He's like, yeah, I'm like dragging myself through the snow, and it's like, okay, so you're not really. I mean, you're acting, but it's also like you're putting yourself in that position right there.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like Leo is like one where I'm like, I thought he should have won it for Wolf of Wall Street, and if he had beaten Joaquin this year, I would have been pretty stoked about that because I think this is a career best performance for Leo.
Okay.
Once Upon a Time, Joaquin, I like Joker, wildly over nominated. Like the fact
this was this year's Black Panther.
Yeah, and so I was real up in arms about Black Panther because I don't like the Marvel movies. I don't like the Disney movies. And I personally just didn't love Black Panther. I didn't see what the push was.
I will say there were elements, like the smaller elements about Black Panther were very, like the stuff like production design and costume design. I could see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it got nominations for that, but the thing that you could just so clearly tell that it was this big PR push for it to get Best Picture because of the representation issue, which I mean, like,
is an issue.
Yeah, it is an issue,
yeah,
but I
absolutely.
think that if you're gonna have a big push to have a movie where it's like this is what we are in 2019 or 2020, it shouldn't be Black Panther. There were way more like if Beale Street Could Talk same year was wildly better.
Yeah.
And that deserved way more nominations. I think it did win a few, but that deserved way more attention than it got. Point being, the whole Black Panther thing getting nominated for everything under the sun, just it definitely deserved some of those smaller ones like production design and I think it was like hair, makeup, and costume or whatever. Like those wins were definitely deserved.
That's where comic book movies should be getting their
right.
Recognition.
But I think the fact that it was nominated for Best Picture and not Best Screenplay, Best Director, Best Leading Actor, that was very indicative that was like a big push to be like,
here, we're doing this for you.
Exactly.
You
yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I definitely don't think that.
And once you get to that point, anyway, sorry to cut you off, but it's like, if your whole point is like, here we're showing you how into this representation issue we are, and it's so blatantly fake, then like why even make the effort in the first place?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? If it's so disingenuous,
it's hard. Once again, I don't know. It's hard for me because it's like, well, I feel these ways, but I'm also a white person. So who am I to be like saying how are you? Who are either of us to be having conversations about like Tolkienization or like any of that stuff via representation? But what I would say is like, to me, I would feel like I was being pandered to, and then also pandered to, and then you weren't going to give me the award anyway. So like,
right.
I just feel like
what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. But with that, I mean, I remember being kind of like, why do we need to have like these Marvel movies, these comic book movies in there? Why do we need to be like nominated? They even did like the popular picture thing for a second there before. They took that away.
Was
But now I find myself singing a different tune to Joker, the movie about the white mentally ill male. Oh boy, it's a little showing,
exactly.
Bro.
Right.
I mean, Joaquin turns in a great performance. I agree. Not the performance. I mean, the master for me is like that's the one.
Yeah.
What are we doing? Not giving him the Oscar for that right there, or Walk the Line, or like
who even won that year? I don't remember.
Walk the Line?
No. The Master. Who won over him that year?
Master. I don't know. It was 2012.
2012. I don't know.
I'm having a hard time picking it out, but
Here, I'm gonna look it up really quick.
Do you
I'm
think?
Curious here. Yeah, you keep talking.
Yeah, Master is so good. Yeah, I mean, like, not the role he should have gotten it for, though he does a great job in a movie that, like, looks great.
Easily the best part of that entire movie, I think.
Joaquin?
Yeah, Joaquin.
Yeah. Oh, you see, I'm a Mark Maron guy. I liked it when Mark Maron was mean to the clown guy. Yeah, I mean, Joaquin's amazing. I think the cast is really good in that movie. It looks beautiful. Something to be said for, like, it's a comic book movie shot on film. Like, give me that little bit of Kino right there. And the score, which is, like, I think maybe the only thing it won for, but the score is, like, fantastic. Yeah, score. It is really good.
It was. I wish I could pronounce the woman's name who won. So many weird accent marks and all that. I sound so privileged.
Oh, yeah. It's just like, I'm not even they're not even worthy of my attention.
Exactly. Yeah, but she definitely deserved it. It was very, especially there was this one bit they used it a few times, I think, like the beginning and then the bathroom scene and then maybe once towards the end. That violin. That was
beautiful. I love it. It's really good.
Yeah.
And as far as, like, there's a lot of ways they could have done the, like, character's, like, realization of, like, the transformation into, like, what he became or whatever. Right. And, like, that bathroom scene is, like, a beautiful way to do it. He's just, like, pirouetting and, like, doing, like, ballet through there, and he's, like, expressing his pain but also, like, realizing he's on his way to becoming something that is, like, what he identifies with.
Exactly.
Very interesting. A lot of cool stuff. I also think there's something to be said for all these Marvel movies and all these other comic book movies out there that are, like, super nationalistic and militaristic. You got Captain America, literally, and then you got Captain Marvel, who, like, she's in the Navy or she's in the Air Force, and little girl should join the Air Force, and then all this stuff. I think it's actually pretty great to have a movie that's like, hey, kill the rich and also give people mental health care because they deserve it or whatever. Yeah. I think that's a nice little turn. I don't think necessarily. I think sometimes that stuff's going to go over a lot of people's heads. Like, I hear some people. Maybe this is a transition here. Hear some people talking about Parasite. And some of these people that I hear talking about it, I don't agree with their politics at all. And it's one of those things where I'm like, how do you feel that way in your heart, and yet you didn't understand the point of this movie, right? Or how did you like it, but the point went over your head?
Right, completely over your head.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we can get into that. Let's save Parasite for the last. That way we can segue into that discussion point.
Oh, yes, I forgot.
So we've talked about... So we talked about Joker. Let's circle back a little bit to Marriage Story. I'm kind of interested in why you think that, like, that argument scene, why that's such a glaring.
It's just, I don't know. Like, it's hard. Maybe, like, this is just like I'm a pretty easy crier.
Okay.
And when I think about, like, consistent or not consistent, but, like, semi one take acting like that is really gonna do funny, but also on a dime turn into, like, heartbreakingly sad. Right. I think a good example of that is Jim Cummings' Thunder Road, which is, like, like one of my favorite movies. And I feel it all. I believe it on the actor and everything like that. Okay. For whatever reason, when it's Laura Dern and
that really, like, she was good, but
she's good at being bad.
Yeah. That's one of those
her
things where it's
she's
just
really
like,
good.
Yeah. She definitely deserved that award.
Yeah, I like Laura Dern. She's really taken on some roles recently that are like, I want you to hate me.
Yeah.
The Last Jedi being one. But it's like The Last Jedi, and then I think she's in, I didn't see it, but Big Little Lies season 2. She's also like apparently like a pretty evil antagonist in that one. Gotcha. I don't know how else to say it. But she's fantastic. It's not hitting for me. I don't like the director. ScarJo is, like, just so on me. I also can't stand that she's engaged to or dating Colin Jost. Like, get out of here. Just you be white elsewhere. But
I'm, like, almost the opposite, though. Like, I think that she did a a really good job, not maybe in that argument scene, but the scene where she's first talking to Laura Dern, especially.
That's maybe the strong point of the movie for her.
When I saw that, I was like, okay, I can see why she would have gotten that nomination.
Yeah, but also
Adam
2
Driver,
nominations.
Yeah. I think that she definitely deserved it for Jojo Rabbit too. I really liked her in that, especially that scene where she pretends to be the dad, and
I haven't seen Jojo.
You should. It's definitely worth it. My only complaint about it is that it feels a little bit too Wes Anderson-y.
Oh, it's like
at points,
yeah,
basically, yeah. So it's very, very funny, and
I got to see it. I don't.
I liked it a lot.
I have to see it. I like Taika. I loved What We Do in the Shadows. Mm-hmm. As far as the comic book movies that annoy the hell out of me, I really liked Thor Ragnarok when it came out.
He's one of the best comedy directors working today. I think
he's good. Also, the What We Do in the Shadows TV show is also
I haven't checked it
out. A+ stuff. It's very good.
Do they do it?
It's not a remake. It's like
this is happening in New Zealand and also elsewhere.
I don't know exactly how to put it. It just feels good. It nails what the tone is of the movie, right, and like the whole mockumentary style and everything like that without reusing jokes. I mean, I guess there's been hundreds of years worth of vampire lore to make jokes about, so it's kind of an infinite well. But within context of the movie, is it? I don't think any of the characters from the movie show up in the show at all.
But are they like canonically like it's a timeline where it's like this is happening in New Zealand, but then this show is also happening elsewhere? Or you don't know?
As far as I know, it doesn't make pains to like say that they're connected or that the movie even exists.
Okay.
But it's like all new characters, but the same kind of dynamics that are going on, right?
Okay.
They found what the tone is of the movie, and they were like, okay, they found a way to.
I was really worried about that too, because like I have a big problem, and we can touch on this a little bit later with Parasite, but I have a big problem when something is like something foreign or something independent is successful, and then the response is to then take the source material and turn it into something new.
So you're referring to the Adam McKay miniseries? The Parasite?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
I hate it when you have something that is already successful and you're worried about it not being as well received because it's foreign or because it's too independent, so you just buy the source material and then remake it. I'm a huge proponent against that.
I don't know what they're doing with that.
Yeah.
I know that hope is that it's
producing it.
It's Fargo style, personally.
Okay.
Because I love the Fargo TV show. I think it's great. It's amazing. Love the tone of it. I think they transfer that into a long form thing pretty perfectly. Mm-hmm. It's also 3, short seasons or whatever. I think what you need to do with a Parasite miniseries, if the gods have now deemed that we must have this, unfortunately, we can't just let a movie be good. Yeah. I think you need to just focus on the themes and the tone and everything like that. Yeah, you don't need to work on the plot. Mm-hmm. It doesn't need to be that exact plot they've got there. Though now that I'm like thinking about it, I'm sure anyone who's thought about it, with dollar signs in their eyes for a second, it's like, well, we could certainly pad that out.
Exactly.
There's a lot of character building. I want to hear more about the tutor's relationship with the 15-year-old girl or whatever. It's like, we wanted to glaze over that in the movie. We want to like these characters.
Okay. So let's so we got that out of the way. You said you didn't see Jojo Rabbit.
I did not see Jojo Rabbit.
I would strongly recommend it.
I'll check it out.
It's not. There's parts of it where you're like, okay, but there's a lot of the one thing I'll say is that it's very I don't know how to word it without doing it a disservice. It's very funny, but at the same time it weaves drama very, very well, and it's never like at the point where you're like it never takes it like. It takes advantage of like the fact that the Holocaust is real and that World War II is happening, but it's always at the expense of the Nazis. It's never at the to an extent it's at the expense of the Jews, because you have like all these characters being like, they hang from the ceiling like bats, and they're like so you have those, but like it's more to the point of like, look how crazy
ridiculous
these people were. It's such an original way and such I think a good way to talk about issues like acceptance and prejudice and racism and all that. It's very, very fresh, I think.
So my only thing with JoJo, and the thing that's kind of kept me from stopping it, is I'm done with like goofy Nazis personally. Especially just we got our current world climate. We don't have to get like too much into everything or whatever. But it's like I don't these people suck. I don't need to see them portrayed in like a nice light, or not even a nice light, but like, oh gosh, aren't they goofy? Kind of like, it's like, no, these people are mass murdering,
And that's one thing.
Foot soldiers of a mass murdering madman. Exactly. They must be destroyed.
I think but that's one thing that they do well is that it's less so that, oh man, look how goofy. Like there certainly are those moments where it's like, look how goofy this is, but for the most part, it's like, look how like the kind of like in Django Unchained where you have the scene with the white supremacists and they're like trying to figure out how to put on the hoods.
Yeah.
That's sort of like the tone of the whole movie.
Okay.
Look how dumb these people are.
The one thing that I had,
and then the comedy is derived from that.
Read or I heard or whatever was Taika refused to do any research to play Hitler because he's what would piss him off more than me, like a New Zealand Jew or whatever he is playing the guy, and I'm like, that's pretty honorable. I like that idea there.
And he's easily one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Taika's great. I mean,
he's great.
I like Taika. I like Taika. He knows what he's doing behind the camera, in front of it when he's acting. He's got it.
It's very good. I think it definitely deserved it for best screenplay. I didn't know that it was adapted.
Yeah, it's adapted, right?
I didn't know that. I thought it was original, and that really, I was like, oh man, I can't.
So what were the other adapted?
The other adapted nominees?
I think that was a big upset that they didn't give Greta Gerwig the Little Women adaptation.
I think that she should have been nominated because I didn't see the movie, but from what I saw, I was really surprised that she didn't get nominated for director for this, but she did for Lady Bird.
Give it to her. Give it to her over Todd Phillips for Joker. I mean, by and large, the other best director nominees, I'm like, actually, Todd Phillips and Sam Mendes, bye boys. Let Bong, Quentin, and Scorsese chill over here in legend territory,
Bring
and
in
then
Greta
can come in, and she can be in the running too, and everything like that. But I guess as far as the representation goes, that it's like all male and 4 out of the 5 are white dudes is not the best look. But I didn't see Little Women. I really want to. I heard it's a really good. Specifically in the category of adapted screenplay, I heard it's a really good adaptation because there are parts of the movie that, if you're not familiar with the source material, you would assume, oh, that must have been the big scene of the book, and really it's just something that she, in her own words, kind of did with the themes of the book, which I haven't seen the movie, so who am I to really speak on it?
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think it's one of those things where it's well, I heard that was a very good job that she did. At least,
and that's kind of where I'm at too. So. For adapted screenplay, the nominees were Taika for JoJo, Steve Zalian for The Irishman. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Anthony McCartan for The Two Popes, which I didn't know a thing about until the show happened.
I refuse to see it.
Greta Gerwig for Little Women, and then Todd Phillips and Scott Silver for Joker. But that was best adapted.
So just not having seen Taika, or not having seen JoJo, I would still want it to go to Little Women, but also I love The Irishman, and I think it's that book is an undertaking to put it all into the perspective, and maybe some of that is in the editing or whatever, or the way that Scorsese chooses to tell that story, and everything like that. So it's hard to say where that really kind of comes in. It's always hard with the adapted screenplay kind of stuff. When you've got a major auteur behind the camera, it's well, who's really making the calls here.
I want there to be one year where someone wins best adapted screenplay and just goes, I just kind of copied the book.
Oh, just total copy and paste. I'm doing my source material.
Exactly. So it's just no big deal. But going off of that, The Irishman. So you really liked that one?
Yes, and I was lukewarm on it the first time I saw it for sure.
Okay. I only ever saw it the once.
So I've seen it, I think 3 or 4 times. One time. 2 of those times were on my iPhone, which, David Lynch would shoot me in the face. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I can't watch a movie on your fucking phone.
It's such a sadness. You think you've seen a movie on your fucking telephone. It's the way his voice breaks with fucking is wow, this is a nice, calm man who does transcendental meditation, but he's very upset at the idea of somebody. But my second and third time, I think, we're on my phone at work. And I really like it. It's all the performances are great. It's career best performance from Pesci, who, if it wasn't going to go to Brad Pitt, in my mind, it had to go to Pesci because it was he came out of retirement for it, and it's who
are the other people?
Pacino was one of them.
Yeah, okay.
Hopkins was one.
Then Tom Hanks for the Mr. Rogers movie.
Oh yeah, I'm not seeing. I didn't see that. Have you seen the documentary?
Parts of it, not all of it.
See, I saw the documentary and I was like, yeah, I don't need to see the movie. I don't need to see. I'm good. I got the real thing here. I don't need to watch Tom Hanks.
From what I heard, the documentary was much better. But I enjoyed him in the Mr. Rogers movie. It's like kind of the same thing with Joker, where he's the best part, but there's only so many scenes, and I that's what he was like in real life. So it's hard to say. Like,
yes,
but there's only so many scenes where I can be like, oh, Tom Hanks is being selfless again. Like, it was good. I liked it, but yeah, I think you're right. If it wasn't going to go to Pitt, then it should have gone to Pesci. It was, and then was really good.
And then a close third for me has got to be Pacino, because Pacino's so much fun. Like, Pesci's not really fun in The Irishman. It's not what he's supposed to do. He's a very like subdued. This guy who's always like, you muttering, stuttering, like, you know. He's very, and he's an old man, and he's like chilling out. One of the hardest I've laughed in a theater all year is Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro's first scene together, where Joe Pesci unironically calls Robert De Niro kid, and I was like, oh boy, we're in for it now. But Pesci's great. I think he was great in the movie. I think a lot of people really complain about the last half hour, 40 minutes, and to me, I'm like, yeah, that the part you're complaining about is the whole point of the movie.
Right.
It's, you know, it's the movie, I think pretty obviously, is his response to the criticism that he's gotten over his career for like making the same movie over and over again, quote unquote, and glorifying gangster violence and, you know, like Wolf of Wall Street, all these terrible people. When the real thing is, like, if you're watching these movies and you're like, cool guys, I want to be like those guys, you're a bad person. Exactly. Like, that's on you. That's not on Martin Scorsese for like telling an interesting story in a fun way, you know? So I look at The Irishman, you look at the way it's shot, and it's dark because they have to do all that CGI stuff too, and it's got that very kind of pallid.
Which, have you looked at the way that they did all the de-aging stuff? It's very impressive.
Yes, for sure, it is impressive. It's still like
there's parts. Well, I think for the most part it worked. There's definitely parts like where it's in like broad daylight, and they're getting up and walking. You can very clearly, whenever they have like a shirt that like really accentuates the neckline, you can like clearly tell. Oh yeah, we're hiding like skin folds and
the big
all sorts
scene
of stuff
is
like that.
It's the shop scene.
Right.
That's the scene where he's kicking the guys. The scene where you're like, well, they should have just got a body double, because that's an 80-year-old man. But it's, you know, it's very kind of boring. Even like when you look at like that opening tracking shot, and then you compare that to like the Coca Cabana shot in Goodfellas or whatever. There's like so much going on in the Goodfellas shot, and this is very like reserved. It's like we're coming through. You can feel like Scorsese aging and like maturing, but also he's trying to tell a different type of story.
Right.
I think the violence in that movie is, in a good way, shot very boringly, because it's not trying to glorify it. It's trying to say, no, this it just happens like this, you know, this is just like what it is. And then you get to that last like 40 minutes and people are like, yeah, we can wrap it up now, because this was a less good Goodfellas to me. That's for whatever reason the prism I'm watching this movie through or whatever. So this boring part, I don't want to see it. And it's like, no, the whole point of the movie, especially like it's illustrated with whenever a new character is introduced and then you see how they died and everything like that. And the whole point of that movie is to say, like, you know, in all of the other movies and a lot of people in real life, the way this ends is you get shot in the back of the head or something like that. And that's the end of your story. What happens when you've been like a horrible person your entire life, and you've made terrible decisions, and now you just have to become an impotent old man and like live with that? And like, you know, your daughter not wanting to talk with you. And what was it all for? You know, you killed your best friend and you're silent. And now, like, nobody's around to keep the secrets anymore. Who are you protecting? That whole thing, you know, leave the door open, which is like, I don't know if you remember that. That was Jimmy Hoffa said that earlier in the movie. Right. You know, it's kind of like a very, but yeah, I think it went over my head a bit the first time I saw it, but I needed to digest it. It's a new Scorsese movie. I haven't seen it, you know, and it's like one of those things where it's like, I accept that this is going to be in the Pantheon now, and, you know, I will have.
I think there's already talks to have it on the Criterion Collection.
And I think it deserves
that
to be there.
Marriage Story and I think Parasite are all getting added this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Parasite and The Irishman, yeah. But yeah, I mean, what were your thoughts on Irishman?
I really liked it. The one thing that I kind of noticed when I was watching, it was funny, we were at my fiance's parents' house when I watched it the first time, and they had this like huge flat screen TV. and I was sitting down watching it, and her dad came in and was like, "Oh, this is that new that's a Scorsese movie, right? De Niro and Pesci." And we kind of he watched a little bit of it and then went out and did something else, and he came back at around like the 3-hour mark and was like, "Oh man, this is still going on." So I
imagine how Robert De Niro feels.
It was, but like it was kind of interesting because I knew it was long. I knew it was going to be like 3.5 hours, but in my head I was like, well, anytime Scorsese does something that long, you usually don't feel it because you're so wrapped up in, like Wolf of Wall Street. That's almost the same runtime, but it doesn't feel that long. It feels way shorter. But this kind of relishes in the fact that it's like really taking its time and like showing you like this is the start of my career to the end of my career, and this is how it's worn on me across all these years.
Yes.
And I think that that's something, like you said, he hasn't really touched on that in any of his other movies. It's kind of not glorifying the violence and the bad things, but it focuses on that more so.
Oh, he's trying to make movies about like interesting characters, and like a lot of times interesting characters aren't good characters.
Yeah.
Because he makes a movie that's fun to watch about these people get their wires crossed in their brain.
Yeah.
I would say Wolf of Wall Street was one where when I first saw that in theaters, I remember feeling the length, specifically during like the boat sequence where they do that whole thing, and that's towards the end of the movie as it is. But I remember really being like, "Ooh, we're still going for it here." And I think with like Scorsese and your Tarantinos and a lot of the other greats out there that make kind of longer movies, when I see them a second or a third time, it becomes more about like, oh, but this scene goes right into this scene that I like, and then it just clips by, and I'm not noticing the time at all. And that really happened to me for The Irishman when I like first was like, oh, and then this goes right into this great Pacino scene, and then boom, 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 and then that's that. Like for me, it was like once it really kind of clicked, I was like, oh, I love this a lot. You know, I'm not sure that I'm gonna really love it on the level that I love like a Goodfellas or something like that, or if it has that rewatchability. I think inherently it doesn't, because it's not supposed to be. Like I said, or like I believe it's a response kind of in a way, but yeah, I mean it's good as hell.
It's good, yeah. I would definitely recommend it. It's not, it wouldn't be my first like within his like, oh yeah, you got to watch this, this, and this. It would definitely be like watch these movies that he's really well known for, and then go back to this if you're more curious. But
it's really funny.
There's a lot of things to yeah. There's so much to appreciate in it.
Yeah.
It's very, very well made. Yeah, I liked it a lot. I was kind of really forgiving with the de-aging effects. I feel like a lot of people really, and that's not to say like there's definitely moments where you can tell, but I think that for someone who's like very Scorsese is one of those people who's like movies aren't what they used to be, and you don't watch things on your phone, and all these Marvel movies, like he's very innovative with like the way that technology is being incorporated into movies. Case in point, that de-aging technique.
You were talking about it on your first episode, with special effects, where it's like the CGI. This is a beautifully useful tool, especially like with all the leaps and bounds we've made in like the past couple of decades with it.
But it shouldn't.
The key is not to be the whole movie.
Right.
It's got to accentuate the things and everything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. You were talking about Jurassic Park. That's another great movie where it's like, yeah, it just looks good as hell because it's CGI on top of something that's already there or whatever.
It should never be
it's a tool.
It's a tool, and your tool should not be the
art,
the headlining aspect of it. Yeah.
But I can't take credit for this. I heard it somewhere, but I was like, oh, that's actually a pretty solid point. It's like a reverse Raging Bull. Where like he had a young De Niro who he had to make fat and old. Now he's got fat and old De Niro. He's got to make young and everything.
Well, not even that. He has a fat and old De Niro that he has to make slightly less fat and old. I guess moving on, last one before we get into our main discussion is Ford versus Ferrari, which I didn't see and didn't care to see.
I didn't see it either.
Okay.
I've heard, the joke was that it's a dad movie for the ages, but it's like, I'm a little cool on Matt Damon. Christian Bale is always going to turn in a great performance. I just don't need to see it. I'm not a big car guy. Is there some Disney in that? Is that a Disney kind of thing movie?
I wouldn't be. They own like 80% of everything.
Yeah, I feel like Disney's part of it, so that is a little bit of a stink on there that I'm like, get out of here. I like James Mangold. Let James Mangold direct whatever he wants. After Walk the Line and Logan, and dude can do it. He's there for it. But yeah, I didn't see the movie. I can't really give an honest
Yeah, me neither. I don't care to. That's one of those other movies where it just looked like Oscar gold.
I'm sure I'll catch it on TV and I'll be like, hey, I'm not turning this off right now. And that's about that's the nicest thing I can say about the movie.
You can say, okay, well, they didn't screw up, but they didn't do anything that impressive.
Yeah.
Middle of the road.
So those are the best picks. We covered
That's
those.
the best pick, and then that leads us to our main recommendation section. So for anyone joining the first time, the gist of the show is that the guest and I each recommend each other a movie. We watch those respective movies, and then we take turns talking about them during the show. This episode, I'm sure you gathered from the title already, we're going to be talking about Bong Joon-Ho's Parasite and Park Chan-wook's Oldboy, the South Korean double feature. So let's get into Parasite first. That was what Brennan recommended to me. I was going to see it anyway because I heard it was fantastic, and I wanted to try and see all of the main nominees for this year's Academy Awards, but I was really glad that I watched this
movie. I would
movie.
like to just throw on for the record. Obviously, this movie's been getting crazy great reviews, and it was nominated before we even talked about this, but I did suggest it before it was Best Picture. I'm not just the guy who was like, looking at the list.
Best Picture.
Yeah, that one's apparently good. I really do like Parasite a lot. What were your thoughts about it? I'm super excited to hear about
Parasite. So I saw The Lighthouse pretty much when it came out, and I was like, 10 out of 10, amazing, best movie of the year. I cannot see anything topping this.
I think I saw them both in a week.
When I got to like the midway point in Parasite, when they're all like sitting around the table, we won't go into spoilers yet, but when they're towards the midway point where they're sitting around the table at the rich white family's house, not home. I was like, and everything that starts to happen I was like, The Lighthouse might be getting a run for its money. At the end of it, I was like, no, Robert Eggers still is number one.
He still got you there.
Yeah, but I would easily, like, this is probably my second favorite movie of the year. Definitely one of the best international movies I've seen in a long time. It was wonderful, fantastic. And I mean, he has a bunch of good titles to his name. Mother, I haven't seen all of it yet, but I've seen the first third of it. The Host, I'm pretty sure he did as well. Fantastic.
Both great. Okja is very good.
I haven't seen that one yet, but I've heard it was great.
And this is me saying it without having any information about the source material either, but I really liked the movie, as it were.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was
Snowpiercer, obviously.
I haven't seen Snowpiercer either. Well, I was a little hesitant because it's like I find it like weird sometimes when like when there's like a director who's like really good at working with like his talent and so like in this instance
South Korean
like,
actors,
South Korean, and I'm worried that there's going to be like the fact that he's working with English actors, something is going to get literally lost in translation, and they're not going to do justice to what he wants to do necessarily.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
You don't. It is especially. I mean, like Tilda Swinton is in Snowpiercer and Okja, and like. I mean, his translator is very good, and she's actually, she's a director, his translator.
Was she the same one who did, like, the speeches for him?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And apparently she's working on a movie about awards season, and, like, being somebody going through the award circuit, and it's like, is that going to be a horror movie, or, like, what? But I would say, like, that's not an, like, unfair criticism, or, like, an unfair, like, worry, really, is what it is, not a criticism. Okay. It's not. You don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, like, when you get Chris Evans, you know, he's perfectly suitable for the role. I think he does just a fine job. I don't think he's the best actor in the world, you know?
Right.
I think the acting is... it's hard to say. I mean, as Chris Evans is your lead in that movie, so it's you're looking at him acting most of the time.
And I haven't seen it yet, so I can't really, like...
Yes. So for me, I would say...
But
I really like the performances he gets out of like anybody. I think he really kind of knows what he's doing, and it's it's like one of those things where it's like, put on my art school cap here for a second, but it's the beauty of cinema that's like a universal language. Like you kind of get it. It's themes and everything like that. Where it's like even if we don't have the one-to-one words here, like I
guess like literally lost in translation. That's kind of a bad way to put it. It's just like the styles are usually so different. I feel like.
Absolutely.
So that's my main worry. Is not that literally they're like he's gonna say do it this way, and then the actors interpret it as like I don't know that. Okay, I'll do like
the difference between Oldboy and the remake of Oldboy.
Exactly. Yeah. So if it was an instance where like Park Chan-wook was like direct was like they were like, we're just going to buy the source material. You come over here and do a 1-to-1 of what you've just
Oh,
did,
yeah.
it's probably like it's not nearly going to be as bad as Spike Lee's Oldboy, but it's gonna.
Oh, it's a Spike Lee joint.
Yeah, Spike Lee did the Oldboy remake, and you can tell his heart's not in it at all. Just watch any interview of him. They're like, "So man, you got to be excited about doing an Oldboy remake," and he's like, "Yeah." It's a reinterpretation.
Somebody had to do it.
Yeah.
Like, somebody had to cash the paycheck.
But yeah, no, it's let's get back on track a little bit here. So it's
Parasite.
Parasite was great. Loved it.
Defy genre.
Yeah.
I can't place a genre on the thing.
I mean, it's definitely like a drama, but it's hard to like. There's so many subgenres of that you can't like. Yeah, you just can't put a label on it.
I would almost argue it's like a dark comedy before it's a drama. But it is a drama,
especially when it gets towards the end, like the last 10 minutes or so. You're like, okay, yeah, this is like intense. But up until that point that I mentioned, it's almost a hard time pinning it as like any one thing. Maybe dark comedy, like you said. But
I don't know if you had this experience. So I don't know if when you've talked to other people about the movie, the name.
Yeah.
It invokes a lot of things for people who haven't seen the movie, and when you're like, "This movie, I like Parasite," it's like, I don't know if I really want. Like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
And it's a great name for the movie. It's like a perfect name for the movie. It's like the perfect metaphor. The whole thing, it's cohesive. It works perfectly.
Right.
In my mind, though, my dumb American audience mind, I'm going to see the movie. I'm like, so when did they turn into zombies, though? And so you got that scene where they're getting gassed in their apartment, and I'm like, this is where the parasite happens. And it's like, nope, that's just another one of the horrors of capitalism. That people spray this stuff into your apartment if you're a poor person.
Exactly.
So I think once I'd heard so many good things about the movie prior to seeing it. I was predisposed to liking it. I like Bong Joon-Ho's work. But when I saw it, and once I could put aside that this isn't taking a horrible
of a dark turn.
Yeah, when it's not doing that, I was like, okay, well, I'm still 100% on board for the ride here. But I do know that it's like, if I felt that way, even for a little bit, so many people are going to see the movie and be like, what is kind of... when does the thing happen?
Well,
So it's...
And the thing does happen, but it's not what you think it's going to
be. Yeah, it's great.
But yeah, so for anyone who hasn't seen it, so I feel like with bringing up the title, it's a good point to get into. But the movie Parasite is, you have this one family, I forget what their surname is.
I'm terrible with both.
I know the rich family is the Parks, because they say it a lot. But
the only name I know is the name of the actor of the dad, Song Kang-ho, or something like that.
Because he's been in a lot, though.
Yes, I recognize him.
So he's so you have this family of poor people who are just barely scraping by, doing odd jobs and all that to get money,
folding pizza delivery boxes,
right?
And then
the upstairs neighbor put a password on their Wi-Fi. Now
we're screwed.
Yeah. So
glorious Wi-Fi.
Exactly. So you have this poor family. And through some ins and outs, it's a mom, dad, and 2 teenage kids, college-age kids almost. The son ends up getting a tutoring job for this rich family, teaching English to their daughter, who's about the same age. And then leaving that first session, he hears the younger kid is looking for to have an art teacher, and he's like, "Oh, well, I see an in here." So he brings in his sister as this art person. Meanwhile, she's just a Photoshop, knows how to fake documents,
which is very
and stuff
fun.
like that.
When I saw that, when that started clicking, and I was like, "Oh, we're gonna get the whole gang in here. This is fun."
And it takes its time doing that. But it's so much fun every single step of the way.
Yeah, it is a good time.
It's amazing. So but the gist of it is okay, so there's this rich family who's kind of oblivious. Well, the mom's kind of oblivious, and the dad's never around, so he doesn't pick up on it. But so you have this.
People.
Yeah, you have this poor family essentially infiltrates this rich family to exploit them for money, and then things go south.
They go every direction. One thing I would throw in there is, and I think it's kind of an important part of the movie, because the movie is, at least in my mind, inherently anti-capitalist. I mean, Bong Joon-Ho has said as much. He's got that quote where they're like, "Why do you think your movie translates to so many people?" And he said, "I was trying to make a movie that was unique to the South Korean experience, and it turns out we all live in the same country, and it's called capitalism."
Exactly.
Couldn't be more on the nose with that kind of thing. So if you see this movie and like come away from it, you don't even yourself have to believe that capitalism is bad, but if you see it and come away from it not knowing that is what the director thinks, what's going on in your head?
The perfect example of it that I thought of is like, well, you mentioned like the fumigation part at the very beginning, but like without spoiling what the context of the scene is, you have that beautiful scene at night where it's up at like the rich estate and it's like raining and they're like looking out the window like, oh, what a beautiful thunderstorm. And then meanwhile down in the city everyone's apartments are getting flooded and people are losing everything they own. It's everything. Like that's the key moment, I feel like.
And so I think like, you know, maybe people who wanted to detract from that message want to point up, be like, well, your main characters are like bad people because they're like screwing over other employees.
Who wouldn't do that?
But who wouldn't, if you could? Under the circumstances of like capitalism and the environment in which we live in, you're being forced to do that. It's not their fault. You know, it's not great. They're not good people for it necessarily.
No,
but it's also like you can't really judge that. You know. And, And so that's just another way that the movie talks about like it's us versus them. It's and they want us to tear each other apart in that way. And that's that's the way the system is designed or whatever. The movie is like, I mean, it's rich with like metaphors, everything. Like that rock is like a very good one where it's like it means so much but it's actually hollow on the inside, and it's like I could go into the symbology of that if you needed me to. I think we get it.
But yeah, everything about that movie, from the way it's performed, the writing, the cinematography, has one of the best montages I've seen in the movie.
Cinematography
in a long time.
Is great.
Yeah.
One thing with that movie, we were talking about like kind of the genre things, and I'm gonna even tie this back, is like horror angles, like horror lighting and horror angles to make you feel a certain way, even though it's not.
Mainly in that second half where things go south, but a lot of it in like the first half too.
Yes,
without even really realizing.
So another thing I wanted to just kind of bring it back. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the horror angles on the Spawn Ranch scene are so good. It really makes you think something's gonna happen, and it doesn't happen in the best way. It's very fun, but like it really is creepy, and it's like I love it when it's like, oh, we know what we're doing here. Like we know how to like elicit this out of you without cheating the feeling out of you. It's like subconscious. So yeah, I mean, like Parasite's certainly incredibly well shot. I mean, the lighting really has it really's got like a beautiful look to it. It's It's like
every frame a painting.
Yeah, it's kind of, but it's got like an iTunes sheen to it. I don't know how exactly to describe it, but it's
I know what you mean. Yeah,
I like it a lot. I mean, we can jump all over the place here, but that ending too is just like what a rug pull heartbreaker. I mean, it wasn't so much a rug pull for me because I was like on board with what the movie was saying already. Where I was like, this is not gonna end no way. This is reality here because that's not been the movie we've been watching up to this point where it's gonna give us the happy ending where the kid can somehow buy back and his dad has lived fine down there the entire time or whatever.
I guess that's our cue to get into spoilers.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I don't think that's too much. I think you gave it just enough. So spoilers, if you haven't seen Parasite, see it in whatever way you can. It might
except on your fucking time.
it might be in theaters still at the time of this recording, but definitely get it any way you can, and it's one of the best of the year.
It's out on Blu-ray and digital now too.
So, okay, cool, perfect. So you have no excuse not to.
No, truly no excuse, you swine.
So the ending. Holy shit.
The ending. Yeah. Right? I mean, so
I guess let's work our way to the ending. Because what I really liked about it is I was on board with it. I was like, man, this is good. I like where this is going. And then when the old housekeeper comes back. And she goes down in the basement and is like, "Oh, she's been gone for a while."
She's so creepy too.
I knew something was gonna happen.
They're both so creepy. The old housekeeper and her husband, they're both just like insane. It's so fun to watch.
The husband especially, like he really freaked me out. But yeah, the scene where it definitely that at that point I was like, oh, we're this is where we're going. But then the point where they're like all wrestling, and then the family calls and like, hey, we're on our way home, we'll be there in 10 minutes. Like that, from that point on, that I was like, oh my god, I am with this. I need
fun.
This is so great. The bit like where I lost my shit was like they've just managed to get everything under control, and the family comes in and she's like, "Oh, do you have that soup ready?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna serve it." And the old housekeeper is like running up the stairs and just kicks her like and falls, and you have that crack. I was like, "Oh my."
Oh well, all of that violence is like really visceral. It's like the dime turn that Bong Joon-Ho is capable of to like that kick is funny, but that crack hurts to hear.
Exactly.
I'm laughing, but I'm also, you've got me feeling these, emotions simultaneously.
Yeah, we go from rooting for that family of like, oh, don't let him get found out. I would like,
but also don't
like,
kick. Like,
but then also like the fact that she can just like, nope, down the stairs with you. Like it's just.
When you're put in these circumstances, you will overlook other people's well-being super easily.
Big theme of the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's just so well from that point on. Is just like it's so like it was already a masterful movie for that beginning part. But like I was like, I've never seen anything like this. This is amazing. I'm so with this. I don't care what you do.
So
like,
do you think the housekeeper going to handle it better coming back? She's kind of like, I left something in the basement.
Yeah, it's
like,
just,
I would be like, hey guys, I know what's up. You guys got me fired.
Yeah.
Like, like I'm gonna spill the beans. My husband's downstairs. I need to like, deal with this or whatever.
I don't think did she know at that point, or did she not know until they all like tumble down the steps?
Oh, maybe. That's interesting. I just assumed she was like, because it's like we all have secrets or whatever.
Okay.
And well, I thought once she like walked in and saw the fact that the whole family was there.
Did she not? No, she didn't see that. She came in and she thought it was just the housekeeper, and then they go down in the basement, and she's like, "Please let me just slip him some food every few weeks."
She's like trying to move that bookshelf, and she's got like her whole body. It's so funny looking.
That was when I thought, like, honestly, I thought it was because I didn't watch a trailer or anything, but I watched the trailer later, and I was like, if I just saw this trailer. Because they have like this normal kind of bit where it's like, oh, we're gonna con this family, and then that bit happens where they're like, oh man, she's been in the basement for a while, and then you hear her just going and pushing. I was like, so okay, good. This is where we turn into like a weird possessed like that's where the zombies come in for me. That's where I thought it, but it was. But yeah, no, that was. Oh man, it was so good. The everything from
under the table, when they're under the table.
Oh yeah.
That is a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. The parents like getting it on and they're weird, kind of kinky. Not weird. I'm not kink shaming, but I'm just saying they got their own thing going on. They do their own little thing over here, but they also like throw in a barb about how like what's his name smells bad, and he's kind of like, oh, I don't smell bad.
But
it's also like, yeah, I smell bad because I live in this apartment. That I live in
filth.
Yeah,
exactly. The only way I can get bugs out of my apartment is to cover myself in fumigation.
There's a lot of like great iconic shots. For my money, though, which is like the 8th time I've said that on this podcast, the daughter sitting on the toilet smoking the cigarette as like the toilet is blowing up underneath of her is like, oh, chef's kiss. Like it's so good. I love that. Like it's like the it's the film personification of that meme where the dog is sitting in the room that's on fire around him.
Fine.
I'm fine.
It's just everything, like the way that he I don't know how to word this, but like the way that he kind of, well, maybe not necessarily him, but the way that this was like edited too, like very very great. Like I said, one of the best montages I've ever seen from that whole bit of like I think it's from the point where the dad comes in all the way up until when they bring the mom in. Like I think that whole section is like a long montage.
Watch this movie again so bad.
Oh my God, yeah, it's so
I gotta
great.
sleep early tonight, but I might mess myself up.
But it's it's everything about that movie is I love it, and it just like we touched on a little bit on it earlier. It really upsets me that there is this prospect now of the American miniseries remake. But
I understand that. I said the Fargo thing, right? And I would also throw in that I really am a fan of Adam McKay's Succession. I don't know how much he is really even touching that anymore, but I really like that show a lot. And if they're kind of gonna do like that show, and like the way they do that show doesn't feel out of place for if we were to use that same tone for a Parasite miniseries. But continue.
It's just I'm just going off the whole. Almost every single time Americans try to adapt good Asian source material, it almost always goes. It's like that thing I said earlier, where there's something thematically kind of lost in translation.
Absolutely.
Where it's just, I don't know. And we can get into this a little bit more with the Oldboy remake, but it's just almost all the time, every decision I find gets made for the worse. And that's what I'm really worried about, is because you have such golden source material here that it just blows my mind that we live in a society where studios have such little faith in audience members to just watch the source material rather than rather than promoting the hell out of this amazing movie, we're going to take this source material and dumb it down for you stupid Americans who can't get past, like Bong Joon-Ho said, like that 1 inch barrier of subtitles. It upsets me, but at the same, it's like you said, there are exceptions. So, like, clearly, like with What We Do in the Shadows, I thought, like, the second I saw a preview for that, I was like, I just so, like, mad. I was like, I don't care. I'm not gonna watch this.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna recommend people the movie. But then, like, when you say, like, oh man, it's really good, that kind of gives me hope. So,
and like, I am a true cynic. Like, I despise so much content and media. People are like, you can't possibly hate that many things, and I say, challenge accepted. I will hate. Exactly. I'll hate all of it if I can. I want to love it, but I love hating it too.
Right.
So, like, I'm, like, definitely cynical. I think it's definitely great to be cynical of, like, especially in this day and age we live in, for somebody just taking an IP and just trying to expand upon it. Like. Mm-hmm. I mean, the most egregious one in recent memory to me was Damon Lindelof's HBO Watchmen. Just don't do it.
I didn't even care.
Well, like, good. Just, don't. The answer is, if you need there to be a movie of it,
is it a
there
sequel?
is a movie. It's a sequel to the comic.
Okay.
Which is that weird Dr. Sleep kind of thing where it's like, oh, there's a little bit of
we got to tie in some parts of the
collective,
movie too.
A collective like misunderstanding maybe, but it is just a sequel to the comic. But then anybody that just knew the movie, if they're watching that show, then has to kind of get that out of their head. It's a whole. I've wasted so much breath in my life talking about the HBO Watchmen series, but I mean, suffice it to say that it's like, if you need a movie, the Zack Snyder movie is as good a job as we're gonna do at like doing Watchmen. The way to experience Watchmen is in the book, the way Alan Moore intended. Exactly. And the way that poor man has said for years and years, where he's like, don't put my name on it. The way, like, it's the book, it's the book, it's the book. And people just don't want that. I get it. I mean, like, it's hard. It's, it's like hard, or not even hard, but like, just watching a movie with subtitles is a little bit more involved because you can't look at your phone.
And so many people, it's like we live in this culture through not really any fault of our own, but media is so more easily consumed than it was like 10, 20 years ago, that people prefer to have just something that they can listen to and then glance at when they want to. And I think that's what kind of breeds that whole. I say I can't believe why a studio would just buy the source material, but it does make sense.
Oh, I mean, I can believe it.
Yeah,
I just wish I didn't live in this reality.
Exactly. It just, I'm hoping it's good. Bong Joon-Ho is at least producing it, so.
And he's
some of it has to be good.
I am just I love. I mean, like, he's one of our greatest living directors that we've got right now. I mean,
in that aspect alone, he's such a good sport. Because if I made this movie that just swept every single award show this year, and they were like, "Hey, we're gonna do an American series," I'd be like, "Fuck you!" No,
how about
go watch my movie?
Exactly.
Yeah, but he's like, "Oh no, hell yeah, man, go for it!" Like,
another note on that all with just. What a class act that dude was with his best director acceptance. I almost like teared up when he goes to Marty, and I'm like, oh, that's amazing that we are recognizing Marty, because like he's kind of had a tough year. He made a great movie. He hasn't really had a tough year, but he's been.
I have a tough time feeling sorry for Mr. Every single thing I've made ever has been nominated. But.
I only on the level where it's like he's also, for whatever reason, Endgame is also being nominated at the Oscars, and then he has his whole thing where he talks about Marvel movies correctly, where he calls them what they are, and then even you saw the Francis Ford Coppola thing where he's like, I think Marty was being nice, because if you had called him what they really are, you would have called him despicable. And I'm like, get him. So I did want Marty to get a little bit of something there, but that was it right there. That standing O, that recognition from like somebody who was like, I won this award, but this is not possible without having been influenced by your work.
By you and
then to turn to Quentin and be like, and
you were my cheerleader when nobody else was.
And he's saying something different too, because he's saying, Marty, you like this quote.
You inspired me. Quentin,
me.
You
Quentin,
gave me an audience.
All like the thing anyone that knows Quentin Tarantino can say about him is that this guy loves movies.
Yeah.
And so like. That's his contribution, is that this dude like loves movies so much that like he has brought forth this like new auteur.
Keep talking. I'm just gonna change the battery on the camera. Sorry, guys.
So I mean, yeah, it's just like that really got me, and then to immediately be like, and Todd and Sam, both directors I admire. I'm like, yeah, because those guys shouldn't even be nominated right now. Like, you guys should have just nominated the three of them and then like told them all ahead of time that was going to happen.
Hey, we're putting your name on this, but you're not going to win.
Yeah,
so
it didn't
have
happen.
fun in the press circuit.
What won Best Screenplay? Parasite?
Let me check my notes.
I think Parasite did win, and I remember not being upset about that, but I remember I was going to throw a hissy fit if Knives Out beat Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, it's so yeah. Sorry if my audio is terrible right now, but Knives Out was really good.
We don't have to do this. We don't have to go down this road. What pivot? I didn't get to the Uncut Gems portion of your.
Oh yeah.
What are your thoughts on Gems?
You should listen to it. It was.
I was trying. It's a 2.5 hour podcast, my friend.
Hopefully, yeah. How long are we on here? Hour and a half. That's not bad.
We're good.
Yeah, it's Uncut Gems is my abridged thoughts on it. Loved it. Really appreciated Adam Sandler's performance. Obviously, the overlooked aspects I feel like were definitely the cinematography, and the sound design.
The score is great. The sound design and score. Yeah.
But the one thing the one little thing that I really appreciated about it is, and it's just such a dumb thing to appreciate, but it always pisses me off when I'm watching a movie and you have characters, and I go into this in the first episode, but it always pisses me off when you have characters that are in a loud setting and they talk normally.
Oh, yeah. You need them to be yelling. Yeah,
it's just a little thing that always gets on my nerves whenever I see it. And there's so many parts of that movie where you have like 8 people like screaming over each other.
It's really good.
But nothing's ever lost in translation, and I love that. Yeah. So, but yeah, Uncut Gems I really really liked. I think I'd gave that like a 8 or maybe a 9 out of 10. I don't remember exactly.
So I do have to see it again, but that in the year of a Scorsese, a Tarantino, a Bong Joon, all these greats. Mm-hmm. Uncut Gems is my favorite.
Have you seen their other movie,
Good Time? Yeah, and I think they even have other stuff, but Good Time I did see. I saw Good Time. Good Time is the only thing that made me open to Lighthouse and Pat in general. I remember seeing the trailer for Good Time and being like, "Oh,
Robert Pattinson, really?
Well, he kind of doesn't even look like Robert Pattinson, and he's doing he's playing a character, and he's great in Good Time. And so, like, once I saw that, I was like, okay, he's not Twilight Boy for me anymore,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like and then he's also amazing in Lighthouse. Not to do a full blown recap of your last episode, but I mean, like, I mean, Uncut Gems might be my favorite of the year. Amazing Sandler performance. The one thing I can't stand when people are talking about it is they're like, well, who knew Adam Sandler could act? I'm like, we've known this shit, people. Come on. Like, he just chooses the
he
good.
Was in just recently he was in a Safdie Brothers short film, which I only saw like a couple seconds of it. I still have to finish it, but it's called Goldman Silverman, I think, where he's like a street performer in New York, like one of those people who like is like, oh, take a picture with me, and it's like just this short little like thing where he's like has this gimmick, and then there's another guy who has one of the Safdie brothers has a similar gimmick, and they're like competing.
Interesting.
So
that's fun.
It looked kind of funny, but
I'll check that out.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it might be on like Vimeo or something like that, but I don't know. I'll link to it in the description. But
I'm sure it'll be on the uncut Blu-ray or whatever.
Definitely, yeah. But it's Sandler was great.
But we can. I mean, I won't tell you what to do. We can bring it back to where we are here.
No, but what was our question really quick? What were we saying the screenplay was?
I think Parasite won Best Screenplay. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think you're right, because there was original screenplay was Knives Out, Marriage Story, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite.
So I think the one thing about that, not even really, I'm not upset. It's not I don't have it deserves it for sure.
Although I did really like Knives Out.
So yeah, I don't. Yeah, just not for me. But and Rian Johnson in general, not a fan. But the one thing I was noticing with the nomination screen when it was like showing what the previews for were like, yeah, this is an example of like the good screenplay within it.
Yeah.
Once Upon a Time was the only one where I was like, yeah, I mean, look at that screenplay right there. I mean, that's amazing. Listen to this dialogue. And that's me not realizing necessarily that a screenplay isn't just dialogue. Mm-hmm. And like that's where Parasite does also really shine, is the things that people aren't saying or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm still like, that's his award here. I mean, is this not an unspoken thing after Inglourious Basterds and Django that we give him Best Screenplay and Supporting Actor, and those are the Tarantino Awards? We let him have these.
Yeah, I won't lie. There was part of me that was like, oh, man, Tarantino's not going to get a Best Director.
Well, I knew he was. I
wanted to, like, but I
wanted with all my heart.
I'm really happy that Bong Joon-Ho won it, but I would kind of like, and if he's one of those like Kubrick never won an Oscar, so if Tarantino is one of those people that is just that just never wins an Oscar for directing, and I mean, like, he's won 2 already for his writing, but I think that he definitely deserves at least 1, or maybe some sort of like lifetime recognition thing that they do.
I mean, certainly.
At some point, he's deserving of that at some point, I think.
My only thing now is that it's like, I want him to get it for the one that he deserves, as we've talked about before. And like, if he truly only has one more movie in him,
then this better be the best fucking thing.
If they're going to give it to him for it, it better be the best one. That it is that kind of thing. It's interesting,
right? So yeah, we kind of really got off the rails.
We're all over the place. But Parasite's great.
Fine. Yeah, Parasite's great. 9 out of 10. Loved it. My only problems with it were. Like some of the writing choices where it's like I didn't 100% buy into like how perfect everything's coordinated to get that family in there, but at the same time, like, I can't. That's just a tiny little nitpick.
So for
everything
me,
else is perfect.
I could not help it. I'm watching the movie the entire time. Every role in this movie would be better played by Josh Brolin.
So that kind of brings us to our next point is. Park Chan-wook's Oldboy, which is 2003.
Wow.
Also South Korean movie.
Really fun. And I mean, fun is not necessarily the best word, but I was having a lot of fun. It's a great movie.
It's a really great movie. And for clarification, what Brennan's kind of getting at here is that there's a Spike Lee 2013 remake, which is almost worse in every single way. And if you're going to watch any of them, like kind of what I was saying with like the whole Asian remake stereotype is like, look no further than Park Chan-wook and Spike Lee's Oldboy. But anyway, we'll get into that later. So Oldboy, spoiler free at first, is about this.
It's the story of Johnny Blaze, the Ghost Rider.
it's you have this guy who's like a drunk loser. He's just like a deadbeat dad kind of thing, and then out of nowhere he gets abducted and imprisoned in this like hotel room basically for, it's like, is it like 15 years, 20 years, 15 years. So he
Can I just throw this in real quick? It is a prison. It's not, it looks miserable.
It looks like,
However, I'm looking at the room he's in compared to like my apartment and my bedroom, and I'm like, I don't know, man. You got a pretty good thing, free rent. Like, you got TV, people are feeding you. I don't know. This is pretty nice, dude.
But it's so he's imprisoned in this hotel room, and he doesn't know who's done this to him or why. He has a TV that's kind of like letting him know all like the stuff that's going on
current
in the
events,
world.
Yeah, you see 9/11 happens in the time that he's in there.
Through the TV, he finds out that his wife has been killed and his daughter has been given up for adoption.
Is he not also blamed for the murder as well? Though he's been imprisoned for.
No, he's blamed for it, and then I think everyone else is like, he's run away and we don't know where he is, because it's not like a prison. It's this like rich like thing where you have these like crazy stupid rich people who like, oh, I'm going to pay $1 million.
No, I know.
I
understand that. Yes. Yeah. I guess my question is,
nobody knows he's in there.
So nobody knows that he's in there, but he's been in there for some time. My impression was that he has been in there for some time when he sees the news that his wife.
I think it was early on.
Okay.
At least within a few months of him being in there.
Okay. But he didn't do it because he was in there.
No,
he's being framed.
Whoever did it is whoever imprisoned him is also the one who had that done.
Because kind of like, I mean, you had to see Mother, but that was like another thing where I'm like, watching the whole movie, I'm like, well, did he? Like, wait. And another thing I'll say about Oldboy, before we do spoilers or whatever, I knew the big spoiler.
Oh yeah.
I knew that going into the movie, which I think has kept me from watching this movie. That is great.
Because it's like, what's the point?
Well, what's the point? Like, but it's also like, damn, if we're going to that gut punch, I mean, that's crazy or whatever. But I'm so glad that I did. I'm so glad you recommended it to me because I'm seeing, just what a good movie it is. Also didn't realize, like, how much great action and great choreography is going on in the movie, as well as like
a lot of legit oneers.
Yeah, that hallway is so fun. That's like being the movie, the climax. It's actually like the anti-climax, as it were, or whatever.
Yeah.
But I've noticed it not just in the choreography, but it's the lighting and it's a lot of the architecture. John Wick is like, Oldboy's got its fingerprints all over John Wick in the best way. Like it's like, oh, I love this style, so keep giving it to me like that.
Right.
But I couldn't help. I was like, oh, we're all wearing suits and like the colors look the way they do. It's like weird green palettes that are accentuating everything in a fun way. The architecture is like modern but futuristic.
Right.
Like I'm not rich enough that I've seen this in my life, but I believe a rich person has this weird closet that like opens up in these 4 ways or whatever. It's so cool. So there's something to be said as well for and it's where I think we get really dangerous with these Marvel movies, these Disney movies, any movie that The Rock is in, where it's like they're all made with a giant boardroom of people that are trying to make this thing appeal to as many quadrants, ages, sex, race as possible. This might play in America, but is it going to play in China? And you get these homogenized weird movies. When I think like American cinema at its best, in the 70s, a lot of early Scorsese and everything like that, is the thing that defined so much taste for these foreign filmmakers, as you see with like your Bong Joon-Ho's and everything like that.
Yeah.
And then they get to do it, or your Hideo Kojima's, who the guy who created Metal Gear Solid, and then more recently did Death Stranding, which I wasn't a PlayStation guy. I've never really have been. I was an Xbox guy. I saw this game. I heard the story of this man who was stuck with this franchise and the company Konami, and wanting to do all these ideas, and then having to Konami never letting him do those ideas, and so that he has to reverse engineer those into his Metal Gear Solid game. And then he's making what some people consider to be like technically like the best game of that entire franchise, and then he is not given the artistic control and he's fired. And then he says, fuck you, I'm going to go make my crazy fucking weird movie with Norman Reedus and like all these people, and Guillermo del Toro's a guy in the movie, and like it's just going to have directors I like in it. It's wild, and it's like it's a beautiful thing when you're like, oh, this is Hideo Unbound is like so fun, and I love seeing that where it's just like this person. Sorry to bring it back. Sorry,
no, that's okay.
This person is clearly. I love seeing that a person likes something so much that they are like, I just want this in my movie. I want this in my game. It's a nice little flair to it,
right.
And I love that. And you don't get that. You don't get it to influence foreign cinema or anything that way. With this homogenized, like we're already giving it to you in the, most rounded out way possible. It doesn't have the room to have the rough edges or whatever. So it's like, foreign cinema a lot now is what I'm looking at for like new interesting things. Yeah. But now I'm getting afraid.
It's been that way for a while.
Yeah, and now I'm getting afraid though. It's like, wait, what's going to happen to foreign cinema in 20 years when the Marvel movies and the Rock movies way of doing thing becomes the thing that influences it over there? Is there going to be some pushback over here from some other, area of like, in other cultures like cinema or something like that? But it's like very like, it's a little worrisome. But what I was, kind of just back to that whole thing. It's one thing I love about Bong Joon-Ho is that it's, and I think what works so well for so many people is that it's like, this guy's clearly a fan of American movies, and like it's where he learned to make movies and everything like that. He's clearly a fan of lots of movies, and he's got like strong opinions and everything like that. And it's best, for better or worse, I always want to see the movie where it's the artist's intent and everything like that. I
totally agree.
The movie where the studio made him hedge the bets is like, that's where I get, that's where my problem with like the Disney Star Wars also comes into play, where I'm a staunch defender of George Lucas's prequels. I think he made 6 amazing movies and we just weren't ready for them yet. But I also think even giving people the ground to say that the prequels are bad, it's still his fucking shit. He can do whatever he wants with it, all right? He can do whatever, and I want to see whatever he wants to do with it. Mm-hmm. So the rumors are that after the big flop that was episode 9 for a lot of people, you know, that fell pretty hard for a lot of people. The rumors are that George is around Lucasfilm,
working on
he's kind of
remake trilogy.
I don't know about a remake trilogy, but it's kind of like the rumor is like he will come back if he has total complete creative control. And he's already talked before about like the trilogy he would have made that deals with like the wills, like the midichlorian things. And I'm like, yeah, dude, please come back. Please come back and piss everyone off. Make the movie about like the microorganisms that create the Force and like make it the least accessible movie of all time. I want to see you do it, you genius person. But yes, I want to see the auteur, you know.
Right.
I think people get the thing confused with auteur theory, where it's like it is just one person. It's like no, it's one person that is hired,
one vision
that knows. Yeah, he knows the strengths of the cinematographer, his editor. It's a collaborative process, obviously, but it's
everyone who has this one shared idea
down.
Of what this is what our end product is going to be.
Yes,
and everything is at expense of that vision.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So all of this is to say, Oldboy 2013 is trash.
Haven't seen it. Haven't seen it.
But it's yeah. So I don't even think I finished. So it's this guy gets imprisoned in this hotel, and he finally gets out under mysterious circumstances, and his whole object is I'm gonna get revenge on the people who put me in there.
Yes.
And his wild ride that he goes on, and boy, is it a wild ride.
Yeah.
Man. I don't even know. Like, it's like we touched on the action a little bit. There's a lot of great action sequences, but there's so much of like, there's so much to be said about the main. I forget his name. The
old boy, Dae-soo.
The old boy, Dae-soo, his character. I wish I could remember his name, the actor, but he does an amazing job. Like the scene where he's finally out, and he's up on the rooftop, and there's the guy who's about to commit suicide.
Yeah.
And he just is like, "Are you like?" You can see. I don't even think he says anything in that entire scene that's on camera. But he is like, he goes up to this guy who's about to jump off the side of this building and is like hugging him and like touching his hair and smelling him and like, "Are you real? Is this a dream?"
Yeah.
Like, it's just, that's so like, with no words. It's such a powerful moment. And then also too, like the whole, he's out and he's like, "Oh man, I just beat up a bunch of gang members to prove that I'm a good kickboxer after all those years in the hotel."
Uh-huh.
And he goes from being this badass guy who eats a squid alive in a sushi restaurant.
I wanted to talk about that too. Yeah.
To the guy, to when his captor calls him and is like, "How do you enjoy being free?" To go from being a badass to like breaking down crying in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful performance.
I also thought it was powerful for him to get out, and then he's released or whatever, and after he's like fought to be released, and he's just fought to stay alive within his imprisonment or whatever, and then that guy is like trying to kill himself, and it's like, hey man, you don't. It's like your main character there, Dae-soo.
Yeah.
It's like he's almost looking at him like, "You don't know how good you have it." But like I just fought. I just was in 15 years.
Kind of within that thing where he's like, "Here's my story," and the guy's like, "Oh man, that sucks." Well, the thing about me, and he just gets up and walks off.
It's so good, so good. And then the guy fucking kills himself. That got me.
Yeah,
when the car, I was like, "Whoa!"
He doesn't even look back.
It's so fun.
It's so intense.
That's squid or the octopus or whatever it was. What do we think there? Is that guy eat a live squid, or is that there's some CGI there? Is there some?
I don't think it was CGI because it's 2003. There's no way that it was.
I know. I mean,
convincing. I think that if he probably. Maybe it was like he brings it to his mouth and then they quickly swap out a puppet or like a dead octopus or something. I don't know. Like,
I'm gonna get on the phone with my people at PETA. Tell them to check out this 2003 movie.
Yeah, I didn't care too much for that point. Like, that was kind of gross. But
in the Josh Brolin version, the squid talks, right? Hey, you look like an old boy to me.
In the Josh Brolin version, Oh man, I was gonna make a Thanos joke, but I can't think of a good one. Oh well, I'll put one in post
We'll figure
later.
It out. That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah.
It's the Oldboy 2003 is such a great movie, from just the performance, the tiny little subtle nuances of the performance and the writing, to these like huge, excellent action sequences. There's just something in it for everybody, and
it's funny.
It's funny.
It's really funny.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. Can we talk about the thing? Can we talk about the big thing?
Yeah, okay. So spoilers if you haven't seen Oldboy yet. Sorry, we spent most of that talking about tourism. Anything other than Oldboy. But yeah, Oldboy is 2000. And again, make sure it's 2003. Make sure it's Park Chanwook. That it's not Spike Lee. Mm-hmm. We'll get into that a little bit more here, but yeah,
it's Nicolas Cage. It's he's the Ghost Rider. He's got to track down Blackheart, who's Mephisto's son. We all know this. Yeah. We know the game here.
The classic story.
Sam Elliott is the crypt keeper, and he used to be a Ghost Rider, but he only has time for one more ride, so you get this really cool sequence.
And I'm going to use it to go to the place and then turn around and go right back.
And it seems like a real missed opportunity to have a cool sequence of the cowboy Ghost Rider in an action sequence, but we're not doing that for whatever reason. Oldboy, 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. It's a great movie. Anyway, let's talk about that twist.
The twist, yeah, man. Great. So, great review. I mean, there's a lots of twists, especially even in that scene. There's lots of twists.
Yeah.
I think once again, the moral of this movie for me, there's morals to be learned. Like don't spread rumors, or there's like a bunch of the moral for it is for me is like just kill the guy when you have the chance to kill him, because if not, he's going to stay alive long enough to tell you that you fucked your daughter. And you just need to kill the guy before you can say that stuff.
Exactly. But like, talk about a compelling bad guy too. Like, I mean, like, I don't like, obviously, like, you kind of have to be a special kind of person to be like, oh man, I really identify with him. I really identify with him. But like,
cool guy.
But that scene in the elevator when he kills himself.
Oh, well, that's great.
Yeah, like,
well, I was gonna say, I love it in the elevator when Dae-soo shows up and is trying to get into the penthouse, and then he can't figure it out, and then they just both just like, oh no, we're here. Like, we'll push it and we'll all ride up together. It's so fun.
Oh man!
And so obviously the reveal happens that the female lead of the film.
Is his daughter that he abandoned, and he's been led to believe that like his daughter was adopted, and it's not literally like an instance where he's been, the one thing you find out is that the TV he's been fed while he's in the prison has been kind of like tailored to him to make him believe certain things, and
also they've both been hypnotized.
They've both been hypnotized, yeah. So he's kind of forced into like. It's not like, I don't know. It's so there's a lot.
They don't know they're doing it.
There's
a lot of it's the Oedipus thing.
Yeah. There's a lot of evil masterminding to get our lead to do something terrible to make the bad guy prove his point.
And once again, this is all because he saw the bad guy like hooking up with his sister when they were in high school.
Yeah.
And then he said that he saw it, and now the bad guy. Okay, and so this leads to the sister's death eventually in a different way than you're kind of led to believe throughout the movie. But it's just one of those things where you're like, hey man, punishment not fitting the crime here. Like you like willingly doing incest is not a good enough excuse, and being found out is not enough good excuse to force incest upon somebody after 15 years of imprisonment. It's wild. It's
I almost wish that I was that rich that could be my biggest worry in life, is fucking someone's life over that much.
It's like it's a new level of petty. Reminds me of my ex-girlfriend. Oh boy.
Here, we got to cut.
We're good?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so like Ghost Rider's penance stare wasn't working on Blackheart because he has no soul to burn.
Damn it! Yeah.
But because he reads that magical scroll, he's got all of the souls, and it's 1,000 souls to burn. So eventually, because he's in the shadows that are in the church, he can turn back into Ghost Rider for a moment and turn his shotgun that in the light is a shotgun, but in the shadows
is a hell shotgun. Oh man. Yeah, Oldboy. Great movie.
So, Twist is great. It's a lot of fun. I was laughing really hard because he just loses his fucking mind, as you would when you hear all this information or whatever. But like, so it's after the fight, or if you didn't even really call it a fight, it's him getting his ass kicked by that guy with the white hair until the main bad guy shoots that guy for whatever reason, because he doesn't, because the torture is that guy has to live with it, right? Like that's the whole point, is that Dae-Soo would have to live with his crimes. He doesn't want him killed. Yeah. It's like in the moments where he's like begging not for Mito to know, to know, and it's like he's like, "I'll be your dog," and he starts like doing. He starts doing that was a little full-blown dogs. I mean, it's like, so the thing I kept thinking, and the dude's like laughing at him or whatever, but the thing I kept thinking is like, so he gets down, he's a dog, he's being a dog, he starts shaking his butt, he's doing all this, and I'm like, okay, yeah, but dude didn't agree to the terms of like,
I'll be your dog.
You be my dog, I won't tell her. And then he starts like licking the dude's shoes, and I'm like, dude, he still hasn't agreed to the terms. You really don't need to be doing all this. And then he cuts his fucking tongue off, and I'm like, dude, you need to get some shit in writing before you keep going here.
But I think at the same, like the whole I'll be your dog, like that, like I get what it is ridiculous and it is really funny, but I think it makes sense. No, like he's so desperate that he's like, I'm willing to try anything, and that's
absolutely illustrated.
I feel like in that moment too, he's also like so far gone where it's like, oh my god, all this horrible shit. Like I can't even imagine how I would react if someone was like, hey, guess what you've been doing the past week? Like, it's just
absolutely, it's just wild as hell, and it's just like, once again, get something in writing before you cut your tongue off for like the agreement. Make sure that the other party has consented to the agreement and is like, yeah, that sounds like a good trade-off here. Like,
yeah. But yeah, Oldboy 2003, really good.
So the ending, though.
The ending, yeah.
Does he know?
I think it's meant to be ambiguous.
I think he knows.
I think it's meant to be like a, does he know? Or maybe he's like, but is it a scenario? I think it's meant to be a scenario of, does he know? Or is he remembering something terrible? Like, was not everything completely blocked out through that hypnotism?
So when I'm watching it, I get a very Shutter Island vibe, where it's like, it's something in the smile and something in the eyes. Shutter Island might be a little more subtle, but like with Shutter Island, I get the vibe out of the ending there that DiCaprio's character has not accepted the fate that is being put before him.
Right.
But he has also accepted the fact that, like, he hasn't accepted the fact that he is Andrew Leas, this murderer or whatever. But he's accepted
that he's crazy.
He's accepted that, well, not even that he's crazy even. He's accepted that, like, well, this is my fate. I'm going to get lobotomized on this island because I'm never going to be satisfied, and that's like what's going to happen. So I feel like there's a very knowing look between DiCaprio and Ruffalo, where he's kind of like, where he says the thing that leads Ruffalo to be like, damn, you're still crazy, and then kind of gives him a look like, am I, or am I just saying the thing so we can get this over with here? So I felt like there was that very kind of same thing. I felt in Oldboy was a little bit more telegraphed, where I felt like very clearly, like, the change on his face to me is like, nah.
Yeah.
It felt very much like the smile at the beginning is like, I don't remember it. What don't I remember? I remember the whole thing. Like,
then that's not to say like it has, like, again, it's a very great movie, but it does have moments where it's like a little bit, like, I don't know, a little too over the top, maybe a little bit too telling, but it is thoroughly a great movie, I think, start to finish.
Yeah. The Leslie the Third of the Great Struggle Session podcast, don't know him in person, but he tweeted recently something like, filmers really hate when stuff is obvious, and my response to that was like, when it's American, but like when it's foreign, it's a really cool choice. like, that couldn't be more of like a up my own ass kind of like, oh, these, how dare they go so on the nose, but it's like, but you see, in their culture, on the nose is good.
Right,
it's just like, oh god, smell my own fucking farts.
Okay, yeah. So I guess last topic, we'll touch a little bit on the Spike Lee remake, which you said you haven't seen.
I haven't seen. I'm also not a crazy big fan of Spike Lee.
Me neither. I like a lot of his earlier stuff. I really like Do the Right Thing. I kind of liked Summer of Sam. I think that not a lot of people talk about that one, but. And Black Klansman, I enjoyed. Like, I enjoyed
it. I'm afraid to say it, but I will say it.
There were moments where I'm like, okay, this is a little like, Yeah.
So I hate to be this guy, but so Black Klansman and Black Panther, I have unfortunately the same feeling, and maybe this is very telling, where I was like, oh, the villainous white guy in that movie. I really liked him. I liked Topher Grace and what's his name?
Andy Serkis.
Yes, Andy Serkis as Klaus in Black Panther. I was like, yes, this character that we've been setting up for like 3 years for nothing, like since Age of Ultron, finally gets a chance to let Andy Serkis like have fun, and he's really doing good. And then he's dead, and I was like, well, what are we doing here? At least I have a Hobbit to latch on to. At least I have a Hobbit to be. But yeah, I mean, I really liked Topher Grace in Black Klansman, and I think Paul Walter Hauser. Is Paul Thomas Hauser or Paul Walter Hauser?
Is he the one?
He's the guy from I, Tonya. He was also Richard Jewell.
Yeah. Okay.
I think he's in that, and he's very good too.
Yeah, he was good. Black Klansman I liked a lot.
And Isaiah Washington's great. Like everyone,
right. Everyone, the performances are great. I think that's my favorite part about that movie is the performances.
Yes, and I just think the only reason I really like Topher Grace stands out for me is I just like Topher Grace. Yeah, I really like when he's doing something.
Such a strange role for him.
It's strange, but it's like also plays right into his skill set of like, yeah, this guy's a smug asshole.
Yeah,
like, that's everything Topher Grace has ever always been. You know, somehow he was likable as Eric Foreman, but like even when I go back and watch that '70s show, I'm like, how are you not getting your ass kicked by Hyde and Kelso on the reg, man?
Right. Yeah, but it's Spike Lee. I liked a lot of his earlier work, but you can, whenever you watch like interviews of like when he was doing the press for like when he's doing the press for something like Black Klansman versus doing the press for Oldboy, you can tell he's way more into the fact that
passion project.
Yeah, the passion. He's very like, but like you could not try harder to show your disdain for like there's a bit where he was on some interview show. I wish I could remember it, but it's a well-known show, and the guy was like, oh man, so the host was like a really big fan of the original Oldboy and was like,
so he just wants to talk to another legendary filmper about a remake of a legendary film.
Yeah, he's like, oh my god, I love Oldboy. How are like and you're doing a remake of it? Like, how are you gonna like are you excited? Is this like something you're like? What are you gonna do to like? How are you gonna do this film justice? And he's like, oh, you know, it's a reinterpretation. I'm gonna. I think he literally, like you joked earlier, where he was like, somebody had to do it. I think he jokes like, it was gonna happen eventually. It might as well be me. Like so, but he like every single choice about that movie, like they make for the worst. Like it's just that whole thing of like things getting lost in translation. Where there's a YouTuber I like called Your Movie Sucks, where he did a review of the 2013 Oldboy. But what he did was he didn't just sit down and say, here's all the things I don't like about it. He would say,
here's why it's bad in comparison.
Sort of. He would do an overview of the first 10 minutes of the original Oldboy and say, look at everything that's great about this first 10 minutes and look at how they handled this, look at how they shot this, how they performed it, how they like from the beginning of the movie up until the guy gets kidnapped. And he said, okay, now let's take that exact same time frame from the beginning of the movie up until when he gets kidnapped in the Spike Lee movie, and let's see how every single choice that they made.
Is it around the same time, like movie-wise, or does Spike Lee take longer to get
Spike Lee takes twice as long, literally.
Of course.
The first, 10 minutes of Oldboy is...
all tracking shots.
Yeah, it's him in the police station up until him getting abducted.
Okay.
And it's 20 minutes in Spike Lee's Oldboy. He literally makes that point in that review. So, but anyway, point being, there's just so many points in that remake where it's like, you had gold. There was no reason for you to change this. And it begs the question, like you said earlier, what movie did you see where you think that what you're doing here is better
indicative of the themes
than what you're doing here? Yeah. So
2 questions. Is the twist still the same?
Yes, it's still the same, but it's done way worse. There's no hypnotism.
Okay.
So it's like the whole thing is like, hey, by pure luck, we tricked you into having sex with your daughter.
Yeah.
It just so happened that the first woman you bumped into while you were out was your daughter, and it's just like.
See, I like them pulling the strings a little bit more. My other question is like, and this is real. When I turned the movie on, when I watched 2003 Oldboy, and I'm aware of this lackluster 2013 movie with Josh Brolin, and you got this drunk inside the police station with angel wings on, I was like, if I could see them not putting Brolin in these angel wings.
It doesn't happen. The most
he's
is
not.
like,
he doesn't have the angel wings in the movie.
Instead of so again, what's one of those decisions that's made for the worst? In the 2003 Oldboy, you have this thing of like he has these angels. He's like, oh man, my daughter's great, and like I'm missing her birthday for this, but like I go home and I'm gonna be a good dad and I'm gonna sober up this time. And like you can tell this is like the 20th time he's giving his speech. Brolin is in his like office or whatever, and his wife calls him and is like, did you even pick up a present for your daughter's birthday? And he's like, no, I told you I'm working. What's this birthday? She's gonna have other birthdays. Like that's like
typical like American movie.
Like,
let's get the bitchy wife in for the exposition.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just every single thing they do is so much worse. Charlton Copley plays the incest guy, and
that guy, man.
The whole movie, like you mentioned earlier, where you can tell like I'm in a bad movie and I'm just gonna ham it the hell up. Whole movie, he's like he has this like really high, like your stereotypical high pitched like evil Bond villain voice. Yeah, basically like the bit where in the original where he's like, you called her a whore, and like he kills like Daisu's friend. Yeah. Like the same scene happens in the new one, but Charlton Copley comes in, he's like, you called her a whore, and like slices his throat open, and it's so
that guy
hilarious.
doesn't like I think that guy is so interesting because like District 9 like made him, but it's like, does he take direction?
I don't think so. No.
I think like he maybe received a direct because he mainly works with the District 9 director. He's done like 3 things with him. I think like so Oldboy is Spike Lee, so clearly a different director. That like reads to me like when you got a guy like that where he's like, okay, so maybe do the line this way, and he's like, who the fuck do you think you are?
Exactly.
I'm South African.
I'm Charlton Copley.
We're still talking about a District 9 sequel. I don't know why. It's not good for anybody. You know, it was originally going to be the Halo movie.
That's the vibe that I get. But yeah, the point is just like every single decision that gets made in that remake it's for the worse, and it just boggles your mind. Where it's like, why did you? It's just you ask the question, why did you think this would work? What part of you made you think any of this was going to be?
But it's also
better?
Just the interesting, and we can wrap up soon. But it's that interesting thing. It's like, I want you to get it right. But also you got your Zack Snyder Watchmen where it's like that's a pretty to the T adaptation, still only about like 30% of like what you're getting when you read the source material. But also people are like, yeah, I guess I didn't really want to just watch the comic book. I didn't want that. So there is something to be said like adapt from the source material. But then you get, you know, it's
if you're gonna change something,
such a difficult line.
Yeah, you don't
want to be Gus Van Sant.
Exactly, but I think if you're gonna change, I'm not asking, hey, Spike Lee, go just do shot for shot 2003 Oldboy. But I think that you need to sit down, and what I think they didn't do is I think you need to sit down and really study that first one and really look at, okay, what makes this work? And how can we take these elements that make it work and how can we improve upon them with our own unique way? Because by default, nobody is going to be satisfied who's a fan of that first movie.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, what can we do to get that audience? Because if we can get that audience, by default, we'll get everybody else. And they didn't do that.
Yeah. And I don't know that Scorsese was necessarily trying to do this, but I mean, like, the way to do it is the way he did with The Departed and Infernal Affairs. And that's a Japanese movie, we're talking about all these Asian movies. I don't want to seem like I'm, like, lumping them all into the gumbo. I believe that's a Japanese film. But that's a great movie, too. But then The Departed is like, yeah, but it's Boston, and it's kind of a Whitey Bulger thing. And then you got all of these great American actors, like, at the top of their game, having fun and, like, doing everything there, where it's like, yes, but you took the themes, you took all the things that work, cinematography style, like, you know, clearly paying an homage while doing something different, treading that same line, but like, that's the way to do it. If you have to do that, I say don't do that. Just make an original thing, and I'm always gonna like the original thing, even if it's in its trashiest form, more than I like the thing that is like, yeah, well, it's a paycheck because, you know, Netflix bought the live action One Piece or something like that. I mean, like, Netflix is all over that shit.
Yeah. So, I guess let's wrap it up. So, Parasite, amazing movie. Very hesitant about this remake, but I'll give it a chance.
Who knows that it's a remake? You know, it could be.
Yeah, it could be.
You know, it's like that was one of the things I like with the Fargo TV show is that you could argue that the first season is kind of a remake of the movie.
Yeah, but it's like it's like like how the prequel to The Thing is, and that's not. I don't like. We can get into that a whole other day,
No,
and I did get into that in the first episode.
Exactly.
But that is kind of like it is a prequel, but it's a remake. You know what I mean?
Well,
so
it treads
like
the
similar
same,
sort
exactly.
of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. And then when you get into like seasons 2 and 3, and now coming out 4 of like Fargo, it's like, oh well, this isn't. Once again, it's like it's that tone, it's the themes, it's the tone. It's like very Coen Brothers, even though they're only, I think, involved in the sense that they have their name on the show or whatever. Right. Noah Hawley is really is a top notch. I think he did something that came out. I think he did a movie this year that came out that didn't do super well, but I liked the first season of Legion. And I like all of Fargo, even season 3. Sue me.
That's something I gotta add to my watch list.
Yeah.
So on that terrible pun, we're gonna end this episode of the Watchlist Podcast. So yeah, if you haven't seen Parasite, go check it out. If you haven't seen the 2003 Oldboy, definitely go check both of those movies out.
Ghost Rider,
yeah.
Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance.
Third movie when
not soon enough.
Not soon enough. So yeah. So thank you for watching the Watchlist Podcast,
Thanks
Brennan.
for having me,
thank
man.
you so
really
much for coming
it.
on. It was nice talking movies with you.
Yeah.
I'd be glad to have you on again.
It's a pleasure.
So tune in next time. I'm going to have a friend of mine, Heather Hamilton, on from college. We're going to be talking about some more representation issues we kind of touched on a little bit in this episode, mainly from the aspect of women in filmmaking. And for those of you who want to be in on the movie discussion for the recommendation portion, we'll be talking about, let me see if I can get this name right from memory, 1975 French movie, Jeanne Dielman, 23, Quai du Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles, and I just butchered that title, and Panos Cosmatos' Mandy. So check both of those movies out if you haven't seen them. And thank you for watching the Watchlist Podcast. We'll see you next time.
Oh, Mandy, well, you came and you gave without taking, and Jacob sent me away.